this should be season 2 of Summoning Insight. I'll warn everyone at the top of the show, I did actually have some dental work done today. So listen, I'm a pro. I know how to do, like, anyone who's done CSGO events knows what it's like to be tired, to be mildly miserable. So I'll paraphrase a quote by the great comic book writer Warren Ellis, and I'll say, "You're miserable, edgy, and tired. You're in the perfect mood for Summoning Insight." People don't know. That's actually a secret that people think I'm actually trolling about when that famous Poland incident happened, where when I did a Facebook post explaining what happened, one of the things I mentioned was that I was super tired and I'd had loads of energy drinks, and people were like, "What? So that's just the reason why?" It's like, no. If you're going to go on the internet and just argue with people over fucking nonsense, that's the perfect state to be in. You don't want to be all like walking on sunshine, all brilliant and stuff. So anyway, we're back. It's season 2.
That's right.
Different place now, though.
Yeah, different place. 9 Summoning Insight, still brought to you by AT&T, of course. And this show, we decided to rename it Season 2 because we were getting almost into the triple digits. So, it's time to have seasons now. Now that we're back for the whole year. You guys might be wondering why we're doing this on webcams. We will be doing it in a studio. So this is just temporary until we get... So most of this year we'll be in a nice studio again. But for now,
plus,
this is what
there
we
was
got.
Also the whole angle, which is like, as you see on the overlay there, we've got Loco Doco there. Don't worry, he's not on the show. Like, don't worry about that, guys. Like, I think if you've been following the last few months, like, that period of my life's over. Like, I'm moving. This is the post Loco era, like. But one of the reasons why, though, we also named it Season 2 is I had to give Loco something. So at least Summoning Insight will never reach as many episodes as this and Loco, because we'll just have seasons. So there you go, Loco. Technically fulfilled that promise to you there, son. Better than a lot of people did for you in eSports.
I mean, you're moving.
I will say, though.
You're moving on from Loco Doco. I'm moving on from Overwatch. It's a period of movement, right? Going back to our roots, in a way.
Well, the one thing that's actually quite cool now is... This is one thing that people are going to think I'm like trolling when I say this, but actually it is genuinely insane to think that we started this show back before any other show that exists now. Like, all of them actually are fairly recent, the last few years. There was basically no big League of Legends eSports podcast. I clarify eSports there. Like, Travis, it was more of a scene podcast where he did Whose League Is It Anyway and that sort of thing. But the idea that we started that league podcast in 2014, so 6 years ago, almost now, I think it was maybe like February or something. 6 years ago, and now we actually get paid to do it. That's pretty insane in itself, isn't it?
Not only that, but now we've both moved into full-time content creation and secondary casting. So everything's looking good. I also think it's funny, like, I don't know if you saw, but Jat has started like his own podcast.
Okay.
On YouTube, which is...
What's it called? The Dilemma? I think you didn't think of that one?
Yeah. I mean, if you... I've always said, like, just own...
he should have.
Just own that stuff. When people started saying
if he'd have been smart, what he should have done is he should have literally cocked me by making a series called The Jack Dilemma, but where he, like, reframed the narrative of what it meant.
That's what you do.
Yeah, or that would be the most perfect way to do it. But instead, he just got mad about it, didn't he? Like a lot of people in Which, if you haven't noticed, getting mad at Thoorin is like some low-level Pokemon attack that costs 10 energy and is ineffective. It just work, doesn't like. That's the one thing that doesn't work.
I mean, I think what's interesting is, like, it's like when people were saying that I loved Koreans too much. So I just said that I'm a Korean fellatio enthusiast, which completely defanged any arguments, right? You just own it. He calls it the Josh Leesman experience, though, which
I thought you were actually joking for a second there. Oh my goodness.
No, that's actually the name. I mean, I think Jat Dilemma is better. Let's just put it that way. But anyway, it's good. I'm laughing because this is like one of those things where the Riotcasters started these podcasts like 7 years too late. And
no, that's some boomer level shit. Put it out way. Like, I don't normally use that meme, but that's like he did just go full like early esports boomer there. Like, what name have you got for it? Jat Leesman experience? Who's Jat Lee? Who's what's his actual first name? Josh. So who's Josh Leesman? Though? Me. That's me. Oh, sorry, Jat. Oh, my apologies. I didn't even know that's his name. Like, it's not a famous name, is it?
I do think you probably want to call it Jat when everyone knows that you're Jat. Just a thought there. Might be easier to like Google or find on YouTube, but whatever. More power to him. Look, I think the more content we got there,
like, and that's the bottom line. I'd have gone with some angle like that, some whack pun. You don't notice how it goes.
So anyway, yes, we are going to be here for the entire year. We're going to be doing a bunch of these episodes. Today is another season preview mega episode. So we're going to have a variety of guests. We've got Sven from Cloud9 coming on to join us. First, we're going to have Kobbe from TSM. We've got Zaboutine, two coaches, Zaboutine and André. So André from Origin, all going to be here. Zaboutine from Immortals. And that'll be very interesting. So a lot of LCS focus, some LEC focus today. We'll be doing Puma giveaways later in the show, of course, and we've got some stats from Microsoft as well. But otherwise, just like old times.
2 TSM AD carries there. 1 former, 1 present. That's actually pretty cool, by the way. There's something, if you're actually an old school fan of this show, is that you will know that on Summoning Insight, I don't think we ever in the entire history of the show had an active TSM member come on, except it was only when Amazing left the team and when Local left it. We never actually had anyone active from TSM on the show ever, even though, and I've brought this up as a piece of trivia every now and then because people don't know it, but famously, I think it was like the first show we ever did or something. It was actually like broken. Like the episode didn't record properly. It was when we had, I think we maybe had Dexter or someone as a guest and it just didn't work somehow. Like we didn't record it back then. And basically on that show, which was the first episode, we actually ranked TSM #1 because at the time it was questionable with them bringing Bjergsen in. Like, would they be better than Cloud9 or whatever? So people will never know this. It's almost fitting that it got deleted. But TSM started as #1, but then that was like the pilot episode of like Star Trek with that guy who wasn't Kirk in it, like the other character. And no one ever saw that one. And so then everyone
the original Casino Royale before they when they had the James Bond before before Sean Connery was in there. It's just like this random TV movie or whatever.
But yeah, we actually have an active TSM member now. So
that's very exciting.
There we go. We've come a long way.
You and I know the truth about esports, which is all bridges unburn themselves given enough time.
They do.
Eventually, people think you've changed, even though you really haven't changed at all. That's the key. No. They just forget.
No, I actually learned this a long time ago. If everyone wants to know, I'll give you a little secret that I actually had to learn as a person in life, but in esports particularly, which was one of my main problems. I used to think people just reacted like really strongly to me and just disliked me for no reason. And what I realized was I was the sort of person where, because I'm a bit of like I'd say truth teller, but some people just say obnoxious, like tact. So, there's a lot of euphemisms for that, right? And I would obviously, if I met someone I didn't like, just basically tell them immediately, like, oh, hello, by the way, I think you're a piece of shit. Fuck you. Like, and then unsurprisingly, they might hold that against me. So what I had to learn was, if you just meet people, but don't tell them you think they're a piece of shit, and just keep that part to yourself, but don't lie, don't say the good, just don't say anything, then they actually just think, oh, he maybe even likes me. And then you get by. It's like, that's actually a little secret to move in the social world, I've realized. So sadly, it's almost a bit whack, isn't it? Because sometimes when you have like a little beef with someone, it's kind of cool in some way. It fuels you a little bit, it keeps things a bit spicy. So it actually gets a bit whack that most people in esports also don't have the stamina for beef. They just, like after a couple of years, they want to be like, can we move past it? It's like, what the fuck? I thought we were moving into the next chapter of the beef. Like, let's level it up. Some shit. Come on, Loco. Just because you're not a coach anymore doesn't mean we can't go at you. Like, but instead they want to just move on with their life and fucking resolve all the petty differences. What's the fun in that? Right?
Thoorin just lives in the petty zone for all time. The other thing that I've noticed that's really funny is that people forget what you're like if they perceive that you're on their side. So if you move on to attacking their enemy, then what they do is they're like, oh, this guy's pretty cool and he's right, forgetting that that's just what you're actually like and that they're going to be the target again someday eventually anyway. So
the
temporary friendships are hilarious.
I'll give you a little anecdote there, right? Where I'll immediately invoke the name, but I'll just say it anyway because it's a great example of that. That's a perfect. And if you know what's going on in the wider world of esports right now, this story is chef's kiss, which is that back in the day when Riot really started going, and Richard Lewis, friend of the show, obviously, and someone who used to be more heavily in League of Legends till he got banned from Reddit and all that guff, right? When he was initially starting to publish things which were critical of Riot and expose things they did, this was when like StarCraft 2 had obviously started to go down as League of Legends came up. And so Blizzard at the time was a pretty beloved company, actually. They weren't considered scumbags or anything, At the time, it was a very different industry, obviously pertinent to the fact that this show exists again. So what happened was when Richard was on a train to a DreamHack, I can't remember which one, DreamHack Summer, some probably 2013, I'm guessing, or something. He was on the train and some Blizzard employees were on the train with him. And they were like, oh, Richard, come over here. And then they were talking to him, go, oh, we love it when you're like wrecking Riot and stuff. And the way you just go in on them, it's so brilliant. And he just went like, you do know, though, that's just because they fucked up, though, right? Like, when you guys fuck up, like, it'll be your turn next. And they were like, nah, Richard, that'll never happen. Like, it'll all be great with us. So, like, in the content, again, if anyone knows anything about the Overwatch League, that is just, it's perfect, isn't it? Because if anything, it's almost spun back now. What the fuck?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So we should probably talk about some League of Legends now we've got our 15 minutes of completely non sequitur intro out of the way. So obviously LPL's already kicked off. We've seen some of the matches so far. LCK is going to start up in February 5th, I think. So not quite starting yet. And then we've got mostly, I think today we're probably going to talk about LCS and LEC. But for those people wondering, the purpose of the show is and always has been to sort of discuss worldwide games. So we will, I know I saw in the Reddit thread about the announcement that there were people concerned about, the sort of focus on LPL, especially now that they're a powerful region. But obviously, we're going to watch the big games and discuss. Is
this real life? Did the person saying that ever watch Summoning Insight? We invented covering the whole fucking world of the game. Do you know who Svenskeren is? Yeah, you didn't before she came on our show, did you? Did you know who Kelsey Moser is? No one knows. Even Kelsey Moser didn't know who Kelsey Moser was.
I'm just saying, it is a
Moser on Twitter. Like, we brought all these people to you. We had the fucking people from the LMS on. We were literally begging, like, this guy used to be a nip. Please listen to him talk about the LMS. Like, that's what we do on this show. So of course we'll have an episode with the LPL. I'm sure we'll bring some Clement on, or I don't know if that isn't there anymore. But we'll bring on whoever's the big person over there.
It's also more that we didn't really cover a lot of LPL because frankly the LPL kind of sucked at the time.
It was really hard to watch even.
It was also very difficult to watch. Well, guess what? Now there's an English broadcast. It's much more accessible. The teams are obviously some of the best, if not the very best in the world. And so we are here to talk about great games and also LCS games. So we will get around to talking about LPL for sure.
Absolutely. And it goes without saying we'll obviously do the LCK. Like, I will say we probably won't do the LMS anymore. Maybe we'll have a one-off episode of that. It's obviously not as big a region. Most of the people have exited it, but LCK goes without saying we will still cover. Obviously, the people like LS, Ashley that we can have on the show. There's still plenty of people. It's just that the key thing for me is where we went wrong with Summoning Insight, not the one we did during Worlds, but at the end of the time we were doing it, because that was the time, unfortunately, when me and Monty were the most busy in esports. Like, I was literally just grinding and doing CSGO events almost every month, and Monty at the time was casting something ridiculous. Like, wasn't that when he casted like 5 days a week or something ridiculous?
Yes.
So it's like at that time.
And I was coaching CLG.
Yeah, exactly. So at that point in time, the problem was, I won't say we mailed in the episodes because we would have never done the episodes if they were whack, but we just didn't have the time to really like go super in depth on stuff. So I will say, I think towards the end of Summoning Insight, the mistake we made was we just made it too, like, we tried to do what that guy was almost asking for there, make it just like a general show about the whole world. It's like, it sure works better, I've learned, if you make it so that you tailor the topics to the guest. Yeah. So if we have an NA person on, obviously it'll be an LCS episode. If we have someone from Europe on, it'll be about LEC, and we'll do our homework. See, that's the key element that I learned right there, Monty. That part doesn't go without saying, it turns out, that when you have someone from a region you don't watch on, you have to do your homework and watch the VODs. Like, I thought that went without saying, but you know what? Maybe I've just worked with a higher class of co-hosts over the years. Still love you, Loco, somewhat. Somewhat. Begrudgingly.
Yeah, I do think, like, especially too, it's hard sometimes for the pro players because they're focused on their own play. So a lot of the times they're not watching a lot of games from other regions. That's mostly the coaches or their analysts' job to sort of give them a briefing on strategies and stuff that are being used other places. So we do, as you say, have to tailor the stuff to the guest. But I think especially in this episode, we're going to get some really good information because I know that Zven has now been in Korea for like the last at least a month scrimming. So they should have some interesting insight into what's coming up, at least from the LCK team. CLG, I know they were scrimming CLG, who was there as well. So I think we'll get some interesting information about some of the other regions today. But obviously, as the teams come in, I think we're going to come into their own regions, it'll be a little bit more narrow. So I think we should probably start with
talking.
talking.
By the way, one quick thing to say on that as well is if you've ever watched past episodes of the show, I won't call out the specific guests, but you all know who I'm talking about, certain people. There are some players where you ask them, like, you watch LCK? They're like, yeah, sure I do. And then you start asking them and you realize that they mean like, I watched 2 games like over the last month or something. And so you start trying to ask them, like, well, you play, I'll make up a different role here, not say the role I'm thinking of. You play AD carry. What do you think of it? You select the 4th best Korean AD carry. They're like, they're already struggling. As soon as they do that hesitation, you just want to die inside. Like, can we just end this pretense? You obviously don't watch it. Stop saying you did.
Yeah. And I think we should probably start before we have Kobbe on, who's going to be our first guest in about 10 minutes. We should start by talking about the changes to the LCS format, because obviously this is really significant changes that we haven't discussed at this point in time. So looking at LCS. So first off, I think the things that I like about it is I really like the movement to Monday night games and splitting it up a little bit. I think it works very well in the States because of Monday Night Football, and obviously with the football season ending and League of Legends being, actually, I think both LCS splits, well, there might be there's a little bit of crossover at the end of the summer split, but for the most part, it's the opposite of the football season when LCS is on, not of course counting Worlds and stuff like that. So I think it's great because a lot of people don't go out, obviously, on Monday night after the weekend. So it's a really good time to put premier matchups, and I'm going to be curious to see the viewership. So I actually really like the kind of flex scheduling into that. Now, obviously,
well, here's the thing. Like that, it goes without saying, right? That is something that shouldn't even be that revolutionary. Like, it always blew my mind that when you consider that people watch games don't typically watch traditional sports, they're nerds. It never made sense to me anyway why it was nearly always on the weekend. Like, that's actually the time they might go out. Like, if they have someone who goes to school or work, they're going to be off on a Monday night. They're already gaming anyway. League of Legends, I have to say, by the way, one of the best features you can say about it as a game is it's probably one of the only modern esports games you can play and watch stuff half in the background. Like, that's why I understand why half of them are obsessed weebs with fucking anime, because actually putting half of your brain onto a game that requires half a brain and half onto a show that requires half a brain, it's almost a perfect fucking synergy, isn't it? My problem, I've said this story before, is I was taking animes and sitting back like I was watching a fucking Stanley Kubrick movie and just going, what is this shit? Where's the depth? Like, they're not really going to wear these schoolgirl outfits. Like, what is this? Like, so the thing I don't get is, right, I'll say it jokingly, is I don't get why Riot didn't do it over all the years. But the obvious joke that I'll say for the benefit of Monty is it's because actually the sort of plebs who worked for Riot back then weren't nerds and were actual fans of the NFL. So they were probably like, well, I don't want it on Monday because that's when I watch Monday Night Football. It's like, that is the world they lived in.
Look, I think it's fine. And also, by the way, people watch our show while playing League of Legends. How many times have we gotten that feedback as well? Half the people watching the show right now are probably playing League of Legends at the same time. We're truly a second monitor experience. That's what I'm saying. I
mean, that obviously also explains, by the way, why whenever they attempt to repeat our opinions, they become the most heinous shit that anyone's ever said. Like, instead of just being like, I actually think Reckless is only the 3rd best AD carry, they're like, so anyway, then he said Reckless is shit and he'll never ever play again. Mention of Reckless 21 minutes into the show. There we go. Right. So checking off all the boxes here, guys. We're doing all the greatest hits.
Yep. So anyway, I think that the whole League of Legends thing is on Monday night is great. I think that what really tilts me is that they have basically tacitly implied and stated that Spring Split is meaningless. And I keep going back to this. So the League of Legends season is too long. It's too long. I really wish there was just one split that started in like late February or March, and then Worlds ends at the same time, because there's too much burnout for the players, number one. It's too many games. And also, just have one split. Put MSI in the middle, maybe make another break for an international tournament, and that way it's a little bit more hype. They basically said Spring Split is meaningless. It's meaningless. Like, get rid of it. I don't care about Spring Split. If you're just going to qualify for MSI, and MSI is the top team from every region, what are we doing with the 9+ teams, more if you're an LPL, in every other region that aren't going to be going to these tournaments? I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
Also, you know, like I know a lot of people over the years, who knows why they would do this, have implied that maybe Riot's like biased to TSM. So now that TSM goes out in like the quarterfinals, all of a sudden there's a fucking lower bracket, like the one thing that League of Legends was never allowed to have in the West. Like now they're like, it's all right, Reggie, we'll give you 2 chances in the playoffs.
Look, that was a positive change, right?
So it was, of course.
All right. So I do have to say this. If you're going to admit that double elimination, it's not really true double elimination, it's more like TI style where some teams are seeded into the lower bracket. Still a pretty good system though, right? Like I appreciate that some of the worst teams in playoffs only have that one. I think people probably missed what the tweak on it is as well, which I actually vaguely agree with, which is, it's right, it's not a traditional just standard double elim bracket, but what they do, this is complicated to explain basically, is as far as I know, it's like when the teams go down to the lower part, maybe I'm thinking of LEC now. Isn't it something bizarre? Like one of them goes into like one part of the bracket and then the other one goes into another one first. Like you don't just go straight down like a normal double elim bracket. Am I thinking correctly here? Let me look at the system. That's not how I understood it, but.
Or is it just straight double elim?
I think it's the teams are seeded into the 5th and 6th seeds are seeded into the lower bracket, and then it's basically double elim from that point on, except for the semifinals are not double elim. I think it's a very weird system. It's like a half double elim system. But,
I'm thinking of the LEC one. The LEC one's different. LCS is the okay. Because basically, I mean, we'll get to the LEC one later, but there's actually a change on that I'd sort of like, and I think I have an angle on people haven't gotten. So anyway, on the LCS one, it is just a double elim bracket, basically.
Yes, yeah, it is a double elim bracket with 2 teams seeded into the losers bracket, which is fine. It's more like a TI style. It's more like a TI style a bracket, which is fine. But my thing about this is, if we're going to have this system, right, and we're going to say, okay, double elim, or at least sort of double elim, international style double elim is okay, then we have to change the worlds bracket too. We must do that. We must do that. Please give me double elim at worlds. I can't deal with another garbage final. And you know what really tilted me was that when I was at this Worlds and I was saying double elim is the way, people are like, yes, but Monty, the San Francisco Shock 4-0'd the Vancouver Titans in the Overwatch League final, and that was double elim. Yes, that's true, but the Shock also would have been eliminated in the first round without double elim, and they went through the entire lower bracket without losing a game, and it was amazing. And so and people were like, oh, it was still a boring final. Yeah, it sort of was a boring final. True. I mean, it was cool because the Shock were so dominant, but at the same time, it's not that double elim will give you a competitive final. It's that it gives you the best chance of having a competitive final. Sometimes you don't get that, but it makes stories of dominance even better when you have a double elim bracket. So there's really no downside to double elimination.
You just get more matches. Guess what? If you have single elim, are we pretending you can't have a fucking shit final in single elim? Like most of the LCS finals were shit.
Well, like, most of the world's finals are terrible as well.
Saying, yeah.
Like, that's the whole thing, is that unfortunately, you know, for a game with the competitive history of League of Legends, we really haven't had that many great best of fives in any. If you combine all the best of fives in playoffs in every region that have ever been played, of course we've got some great matches, but we have fewer than you might think, given that this game has been being played at a top competitive level since about, you know, we'll not count 2011. Like that Worlds is not really Worlds. Like that doesn't count. We've decided that doesn't count.
Yeah.
But since 2012, you know, we're looking at an esport that's coming into its 8th year of history right now, and you're lucky, I think, to have one really good best of 5 a year. Honestly, like
by the way, I actually think, and from watching Dota, I'm actually fairly convinced of this. This isn't just like a theory I've come up with. It's like there's some basis to it. Games that are MOBA games are the most suited to double elim.
Yep.
Because so much of the strategy of how you will play the game out starts in the draft.
Yes.
Like it would be like if in a game of chess you could pick the different units that you had, but you had to pick them at the beginning of the game, and then you could never know how it was going to play out in the game. Well, the reason why in Dota it has been so great to have double elim in the tournaments is because it's when you play them the second time, it makes it better. because now you have all the knowledge of what happened the time before, but you know tactically as well. So, for example, does the team that won the first time stick with what they did before? Or does the team that lost somehow come up with, like, if they're a brilliant team tactically, they've got great macro, maybe they come up with the solution that fixes it entirely. I like the case of the shock that you're giving before. So, like, I actually think MOBA games particularly, where that's what can basically ruin the series. It's like, I have no idea what draft strategy people are going to use. Things in the game sometimes turn out to be way more OP than you thought. Getting sort of like sometimes a second chance there can actually produce the best games from my experience.
Yeah, and there's also the factor too, when we think about it, which is that the tournament meta evolves also. So it's not just the matchup between the teams. It's that if two teams face each other in a quarterfinals, well, if they meet again in the finals, that could be like 2 weeks later, and there could be a lot of scrim time between teams that evolves the meta during these time periods. So I think that there is really like a lot to work with there. And I think if you want to deliver the best tournament. So it gives me hope because now we finally, like, we're getting closer.
They're going to see the light. If they do LCS, come on, they're going to see the light, aren't they?
We're getting closer. I don't know why it took 8 years to get here. I really don't. This is more Riot stuff where what they do is they make an obvious decision and then they have a celebration for themselves as if it was they're breaking ground and it was genius. I am happy to see the changes. I just don't understand why these changes can't happen faster, or like, because it looks to me like eventually they're moving into maybe thinking about eliminating the spring split. So like, let's just get rid of it already. Let's shorten the season. It's going to be better for the players. The problem with League is that if you are a top player, you are playing from January until November. And then you have maybe a couple weeks off, and then you have to get back to scrimming again. So, if you are making deep runs at Worlds and at MSI, you never get a break, and I think that sucks. And I think they need to move to a more reasonable sports length season. That was one of the things that I really liked about the Overwatch League, is that it felt like there was adequate time off for the players and for everybody who worked on the project in order to sort of revitalize themselves for the next season. It's a really big grind to do a season of League of Legends as a player or as a caster or anything like that. So, yeah. I mean, people are like, the downside is obviously if you're not at the top level of play, then yeah, your season ends in August or whatever, and then you have all these months off. But that's just because the way that Riot has structured the format with Worlds means that Worlds takes like 6 weeks or more. So it's a little hard. So anyway, I would like to see those changes being made personally. So we're gonna get Kobbe on now, I think. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So guys, we're gonna run a quick commercial break here. And then while I have to get Kobbe on this call and then set up everything like that. So give us just a moment and we'll be on with Kobbe from TSM. All right, we're back. Now, I'm going to have to move some people around, obviously, here. So, welcome, Kobbe.
Thank you.
To our beautiful show. While we do this.
This will all be edited out, so I'll just save all the gold.
It won't be edited out. This is the real show now.
What the hell? This is actually going to be in the VOD.
Fine.
No
we'll
way.
edit it out.
Someone will edit that out, I'm sure. Just to make it professional.
Our very professional show. While I move.
Got professional standards now. I was getting pulled off during the break and everything. Is it done?
No, it's almost done, though.
Okay.
It's almost done. We got Kobbe on. Fresh new AD carry for TSM. We've got the other TSM AD carry coming on later.
Oh, Double Lift. Oh, holy shit, Double Lift's coming. Oh, you meant Sven. Sorry, my bad. I forgot he played for TSM. I think he has as well, quite frankly. I think he's went like hypnosis and got like regression therapy and it all deleted from his mind. So,
I know the viewers.
The other Danish TSM AD carry, you mean, right?
Yeah, it is confusing. Too many Danes in the LCS.
There's only two now.
There's only two. What? Svenskeren?
Yeah, I just mean on TSM.
Oh.
Yeah, he means right now in TSM.
I'm sorry, just on TSM. I get you.
Yeah, it's like the Sith, the rule of two. Like Bjergsen only allows 2 Danish players to be on TSM at one time, one to have power and one to seek it or whatever the fuck that line was. And then if they can't destroy him utterly, he destroys them utterly and gets a new apprentice.
All right, we're
Welcome
good.
TSM.
All right, so we're good. Welcome, Kobbe. Increase
Thank you.
Kobbe's volume. Okay, I will increase Kobbe's volume. There you go. You guys love it. Okay, we're good.
Right. So we obviously got Kobbe here from TSM. We'll pretend that all the stuff that we just talked about didn't happen because obviously the show starts now. We'll edit it at this point in time. Right. We've actually mentioned, we said this during the break, Kobbe, we've actually technically never had an active TSM member on this show, mainly because, first of all, the show hasn't really existed for many years, except for that little Worlds run we did. And back then, I don't know, this will be early in your career, but it was something of a meme that we supposedly hate TSM. Don't know where that would come from. I mean, I just thought it was, you know, a bit of lighthearted banter. So welcome, first active TSM member.
Well, thank you. I didn't really know that, but I guess it's exciting to be the first one.
Okay. Right. Listen, this isn't one of those powder puff shows where they just ask, it's brilliant, everything's great, isn't it, Kobbe? I'm just going to go straight in with the hard question. Let's start here. Let's talk about TSM a little bit because we want to talk about your new team and then we'll get to some of the other teams in LCS. So I'm not being funny when I say this, but you do literally follow in the footsteps of Zven, who was someone who had a big reputation as an AD carry when he's in Europe, came over to TSM, and I don't know what your opinion is, but I don't think he went very well personally, in my opinion, in TSM. He maybe had the odd time he was decent. Put it this way, he was never Zven from OG. He was never that player, that best in the West and all that stuff. So a lot of people would think, did you not see the warning signs there? Like you're sort of following this guy's footsteps. Were there any concerns when you came over?
I mean, of course, there are some concerns, but I feel like it's more on their end. Like, if they are down to take another Danish AD and they just, like, they must know what will be different, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. So I think it's also a bit different because, I mean, Zven, he won like 3 titles in EU, and I didn't exactly do that.
Sure.
So if he had the opportunity to stay on the best team in EU, and then, I mean, I don't know if he did, but that's not something I had the opportunity to. So it was really like TSM contacted me, and it was just obviously the best choice for me. So I don't see why I would be scared just because the last one didn't work.
Okay, nice attitude there.
So,
to be fair, you were also on Splice, so you know what it's like to take a team.
I mean, it's an upgrade, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
It's for sure an upgrade for me. So
I mean, at Splice, I think you guys kind of overperformed. Obviously, you were the standout player of Splice at Worlds this year. We talked a lot about you on the show. You had, I would say, a less than stellar support partner over on Splice.
Towards the end, people gave him a hard time. He was better earlier in the year. Better in the year.
I think we had good times together. I think he was not as... I mean,
it's just he started hinting at Worlds, the problem, so everyone remembers that Kobbe, so they all think he's shit now. I keep telling people he was never that bad a player. He had some potential.
I think he was fine most of the time.
Okay, so you don't need to speak ill or well of your former teammates. So when you were on, we haven't really talked about. We didn't have a Splice guest on, obviously. So what was your experience at the World Championship, and why were you looking to make the transition from EU to NA?
So it's not like after Worlds I just said that I want to go to NA. It's always a case of like, what is your best option? And I knew that I wanted to change team for sure, for like various reasons. Mainly, I knew the team wasn't going to stay together because of stuff like Visichachi retiring. I know that Xerxes would probably go somewhere else, and I think it would take a lot for me to stay there, basically. Just because I feel like with rebuilding the roster, it wouldn't be better than what we did this year. So I kind of agree we overperformed in a way. So yeah, that's why I just thought I would try something else. And then it turned out that I had way better options in NA, so it was just kind of obvious to me.
When he actually phrases it that way, it actually makes a lot of sense why he joined. Like I actually mischaracterized it there because implying that it was anything like Zven doesn't really make sense when, as you say, Zven went from the team that had just won 3 championships in a row and obviously still could have been at Worlds and doing all sorts of stuff over to a team that was in a similar position, really. And he actually did take a big gamble by doing that. Whereas when I actually think back on Splice last year, I also think the team overperformed somewhat. And I think some of that was even locking the players that you managed to get into the team. Like, for example, if you remember the whole narrative going into season 9 was that whole angle of like, oh, which one of the rookie mids should everyone pick? Should they take Nemesis? Should they get like, in the end, I know everyone's going to think this is an unpopular opinion, but I thought Humanoid was the best of the 3. Like when I saw him play, I thought you guys kind of locked out by getting him. And I heard he was like, in theory, the one that was like the second choice or something. He wasn't even the main choice. So like you got a bonus there. So what are the odds you're going to get rookies that are going to come in like that? Probably not that high.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, because when we were building the team, I heard there was no mid laners available, and I was like kind of shitting my pants a bit because it looked like we weren't going to get the best roster. And some guy called Humanoid is going to join, and I didn't know anything about him. So I just expect, okay, this is going to be hard. But from first LCS game, he was just playing really well. And I also think he was one of the like better players, I guess. It's hard for me to do a ranking. I think me and Xerxes worked really well together, but I also think he was definitely like much better than my expectation.
I also really liked, at least at Worlds, obviously a lot of players can get intimidated at their first Worlds or play a little bit more passively, but I thought Humanoid, like, he really kind of balled out at times. Like, he didn't seem afraid, he didn't seem nervous being on that stage. I mean, he was, I think, independently impressive.
Yeah, he doesn't care who he plays against. Like his first LEC game, usually people are a bit nervous and stuff like this. He just doesn't care. He went 6-0 or something on Aatrox, I remember. And then we have to play against Faker, and I think like it just doesn't matter to him. He's a rookie and he never seemed nervous at any point.
Right, one teammate of yours from that squad, who obviously now will never play again because he retired, is Vizicachi, who obviously had the feel-good story where he finally qualified for Worlds, even made top 8 in the one Worlds he went to, but now he officially retired from the game. Can you give us some thoughts on him? Like I heard from the outside that like within the team, he was like one of the main shot calling elements or something, or was kind of like a leadership figure. What can you say about him as a player?
So I think it's easier for me to talk about as a person, or he was more a leader outside of the game, I would say. But also in the game, he always had a calm voice and kind of someone. I mean, obviously he was a bit older than all of us, so he was someone to look up to, because the way he treated everything with a lot of positivity and stuff like this was just. I mean, he inspired me a lot, at least. And I think he was always. He was usually pretty solid in the game. On his certain champions, he was really good at, and was just like a really nice teammate to have. Like I think he was a good player, but even better teammate.
Right. This might sound BM, but that's also my persona, so I'm allowed to do that. Right. One of the things I heard is, right, when I watched your team, like Humanoid especially, I always said, because I actually thought he was better than Nemesis, I thought if he was on a different team, he could have really balled out. He could have been an MVP type player. But when you were on your team, everyone knows the meme of like every game of Splice is 35 minutes long and you're winning all these bizarre late game fights, right? Is one of the reasons why that style existed something to do with having Vizicachi and having Xerxes, and they have their own interesting idiosyncrasies as players? Like, did that somewhat make that the style of play the team would play? Like, would you have played differently if you're on a different team like you are now?
Well, I think it's definitely not because of Xerxes, because he's usually very aggressive in the early game, and it's not like I think we were just like not playing that well, because we had games where you could see we had really good games. We would end in like under 30 minutes, and I feel like it was mostly just due to screw ups really often, and also the fact that I was playing usually scaling AD carries, and at least I think it was in Spring Split, Humanoid was playing a lot of Asir as well. Corki also scaling picks, so it was just our go-to kind of. But I think it was even worse the year before, so we improved from that at least.
Sure.
So obviously there's a lot of criticism towards Splice's ability to close out games and play clean macro at the end of the game. Do you feel like now that you're on TSM, like obviously, you know, I shouldn't say obviously, typically it's not the AD carry's job to do a lot of the shot calling. Do you feel like that has improved on TSM in terms of your communication, or what were the issues you had on Splice in terms of closing after the impressive early games that you have, and how has that changed now that you're on TSM?
Okay. It's a bit hard because it's not like we had that much scrim time, but I would say the biggest difference for now is that in TSM I have at least 3 players who are really loud in their voices and like talk a lot all the time. So it's like almost hard for me to get a word through. And that's like really hard for me to adjust to at the moment, because in Splice I had a lot of freedom to just say whatever I wanted to at any time. Both because of how much people are talking and like what tone they're talking in. And I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but all of us were like really calm. So maybe we were just chilling too much in the game and not like being like, okay, we have to do this now and we have to end the game and stuff like this. We're just really chill, I guess, in the comms. So my idea is that I think I was doing, at least for like real games, not necessarily scrims, but real games, I had to do a lot of work, and I think I'm not gonna do as much in TSM.
Right, obviously, one of your new teammates is a particularly infamous character. It's Dardoch, the jungler, who TSM brought in kind of like last minute. They took a gamble on him. Obviously, his talent deserves it. I will say, he's a guy where early in his career, because I've known a lot of players that got labeled toxic, and sometimes it was fair, sometimes it was unfair. I actually thought initially he was like being really scapegoated and stuff. But I have to say, from knowing some of the people behind the scenes, like it happened enough times. It's like the end of the fucking Joker movie. Like, you get what you fucking deserve, Dardoch. Like, there's reasons why you got kicked from some of these teams, homie. It wasn't about skill. So with that said, right, I would figure you wouldn't have a problem with this because you come from EU West. Getting played by the jungler, it's just like the fucking sun rising and setting every day. Like, it's normal life, isn't it? So what has it been like, though, seriously, to play with him as a player? Like, did you know his reputation going in?
Yeah, I definitely knew the reputation. I've seen the, what's it called? The
Breaking
show?
Point?
Breaking Point.
Yeah, exactly.
Fabulous.
I've seen stuff like this, and while it seems bad, I mean, I think he's not the same person. I think he's grown since then.
Everybody always says that about him, and yet.
I mean, you can still see signs of it, but it's
Sure.
it's rather normal to me. Like, I can be the same at times where I feel like in many of my teams in EU, there's just a lot of players like that. And yeah, also myself at times who are just, I mean, there's a line between just being straight up toxic and just being really direct with your teammates and say,
Sure.
you're really, really fucking bad and you need to fix this, right? So I don't think it's like a problem for me. But
I would also agree. Like I've always said this whenever we did the Listen Local show, is like I think that's like a cultural divide. Like in America, they seem to do this thing where it's like they act like playing video games is like an office job, and it's like, oh my god, you were verbally abusing your teammates. Like if you play video games, like, what do you think happens? Like in Europe, that just happens. People let off
or
steam.
Sports.
Someone has an
Or
argument.
sports.
Of course.
But it's also,
by the way, I will just say, like, to be fair, Dardoch's got one over on me, hasn't it? He was destroying his relationship with Loco on camera years before me. I was just confident.
So I do think it's also a different, it's not American. It's a combination of American and also being in like these people not generally having played traditional sports. If
Just nerds.
If they're just nerds. And so if you are actually out there and playing sports with other people, obviously there's trash talking that goes on all the time on the field. So you kind of just get used to it from a young age. And so I think a lot of these players are a little thin-skinned, not to justify Dardoch's behavior, because obviously that's pretty extreme, but I do think
but one angle you've just made me think of there that I hadn't actually thought of, Monty, is like that is a thing that I don't know about if you've noticed this, Kobbe, but whenever you see in movies that stereotype of like you're either a jock and you play American football or you're the nerd who does stuff. Like I actually, when I first watched that, I had to like learn that aspect. I was like, what the fuck is this shit? Because if you're in Europe, even if you're a nerd, you still play football. Like you still play like sports. There's not that big divide in that way. Actually, I think probably every LEC player probably played sports as a kid.
I mean, exactly. I come from traditional sports too. I played soccer for 10 years, and I guess I was kind of nerd at the same time because I was playing a lot of video games. But it's just you develop that easily from sports. And what I've heard from NA, I haven't seen it yet, is just that there's a lot of people who don't care as much. And again, I'm just talking from what I've heard. And to me, if you're playing for your life every day and you're doing everything you can to win, then I have seen it with a few teammates too. It literally pisses me off so much if I see someone just jacking off after scrims and just be like, oh, I guess we lost. That kind of sucked. And then go play fucking Fortnite or something. Like, that really is the most triggering thing.
So one thing I was talking to Papa Xmithie about yesterday, we were hanging out, and he said that there's a new scrim meta, which is very interesting, that was taken from EU. So last year, and it's interesting to talk to you because you were in Europe last year, obviously. So now in NA, the teams are playing one 5-game block of scrims per day. So they're scrimming less, but they're scrimming a full 5 games against one opponent, which is how EU scrimmed last year. So this is obviously a big change. Like, you know, back in the day, teams used to do like 2-3 game blocks with 2 different teams. And now this has gone over to North America after Europe had such great success. So as you're saying, with less scrim time, it's more important that people don't screw around during those scrim blocks. But what do you think is good about this change in sort of the scrim culture? Because there's been a lot of talk about player burnout, how long people can actually, what's the most efficient way to practice. But this seemed to work really well for the European teams that advanced very far and even won some of the international tournaments last year.
So I think this method is especially good when it comes to playoffs. Like you just play a best of 5 as if it was in LCS every day. And that's also, I think it's more intensive because, at least for myself, I prefer to just, okay, we start now, we play 5 games and then it's done. It's harder to like put all my energy, let's say 5 hours in a row, other than, let's say I put my energy 3 hours, then I have a 2-hour, 3-hour break. I'm like doing whatever, playing solo queue, just, and then you have to find your energy level back again, like 3 hours later. So at least I know it's different priorities, but I prefer the 5 games in a row because it just feels more intense and you actually get really good games. At least 3 or 4 really good games.
Okay. Right. Why don't we do this? Like, my plan for this mega episode is obviously we can't cover all 10 teams in the whole league. There isn't time for each guest. So what we'll do instead is with each guest, we'll talk about their team and then we'll give you the choice. Like what's another team in the LCS this split that you're interested in that would be a cool team to talk about? Who would you put forward? Who do you want to talk about? You've got the choice of everyone because you haven't talked about anyone yet.
Yeah, and your opponents in week 1 are Immortals and Liquid is without a jungler right now.
Oh, well, just to be honest, I don't exactly know every single roster. Those I know is like I know Liquid, I know Cloud9, and
were you aware that Paul Belter is jungling for Liquid?
Yes. I have seen that.
Okay, good. At least you knew that.
I guess Cloud9 is pretty interesting to me, just because I don't know. It just, I think they have really good players on that team, but I think it can also go wrong really fast, just because they seem to have younger players and have they completely revamped the roster, and it's just really hard for me to tell how it's gonna turn out.
No, I mean, if you look at that team, like for people who don't know, what Cloud9 did was they let Svenskeren go, who was literally the MVP of the last split of LCS, and they used Blabber, who obviously had been their sub jungler in the past. They bought Vulcan for like, I think it was $1.5 million buyout from, I think he was on Clutch, wasn't he? I think that was the right team. They brought in Zven, obviously that's why Kobbe is on TSM now. And then they kept Niski and Licorice. So basically, like 3 of those players have played together. But in that team, like Zven suddenly becomes like a super veteran, and even Niski looks like a veteran. And to me, Niski I still think of him as not that old school of play. He's only played a couple of years. So I agree. Like there's certainly talent at all the positions. It's just like this is going to really test Reaper and what his actual level as a coach is, in my opinion, because based on the things I heard behind the scenes, he's one of the people who wanted one of these lineups. Like he wants to be the guy who's like the Jose Mourinho, who has the complete control over the team and gets to say who joins. He doesn't just want it to be like Team Liquid, where it's an all-star team, and everyone. Not if you notice, Kane almost never even gets the coach of the split nomination because everyone goes, "You've got the best players." So I think this puts a lot of pressure on Reaper. Actually, if you look at the lineup he's got, it's not a guarantee that this team wins.
For what it's worth, I can say from the Cloud9 side that Reaper has a lot of faith in Blabber as a jungler, and that part of
I saw it Worlds.
I don't think that was a great idea, but I don't think that was a great idea at all. But that said, there's been an off season to work on it, and obviously, Blabber I think was 17 at Worlds, 17 or 18. He's very young, so I think that there is he sees an upside there. We're gonna wait and see if that's true or not. Obviously, at Worlds it didn't go so hot, but I think C9 they are very interested and always have been in sort of developing their own talent and doing things their own way. And they've kind of proven that. I mean, if you look at when they made the semifinals at Worlds, they did it with 2 rookies that year in Licorice and Zazel. So I think that they have a track record of doing this. So there's not a reason to believe that they can't at least have some level of effectiveness again. I expect C9 still to be one of the top teams in the league.
Yeah, go on. What are you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, I expect them to be at the top 2, but I just don't see it as a championship.
Oh, I don't
championship winning team. And
yeah, I don't either.
That's for me, like, because sure it has worked in the past, but there's still so many question marks, and mid jungle is really damn important roles in the game, together with support as well. And when it's just, I mean, I don't know how much synergy they have, but obviously they haven't played together that long.
Have you scrimmed against their
Blabber's
team yet?
20. Sorry about that. Anyway,
No,
continue.
I haven't scrimmed against them yet, but I will
Okay.
soon, I think. And then to the point where you said about me joining TSM, I'm just gonna be another Sven. Like that worry being there, it's like, aren't they gonna have the same about Sven if that's what people are saying? Because I remember
Sure.
Sven as a really fucking good player in EU, and I still think he should be good because I
Yeah.
can't imagine someone just being bad. It's not like he is like 40 years old, you know. And then they must have the same worry that, okay, maybe like what would be different from TSM to Cloud9?
What do you think are the key differences? Like, have you talked to any of your teammates about the way that you play versus the way Zven plays? Like, what can we expect? How's TSM changed with you coming in? Obviously,
Do you make
with
it a
Dardoch,
condition that you get to farm the golems at like level 3 or whatever it was?
So for me, I feel like gameplay is not, at least that's what they told me, because I feel like gameplay, it's not like me and Sven are like very different, I would say, at least in EU.
Similarities for sure.
Yeah, like some similarities, some differences as well. I think it's more outside of the game and like how you work with the team. They felt like that would be a big difference, but then again, they don't know me, so how can they know that? But yeah, inside the game, it's right now, it's like, just to be honest, it has been kind of hard for me to adjust to the team in the beginning, but it's been getting a lot better. And it's just always like that in the beginning. Like I just played on a team that was together for 1 year, and I felt so comfortable every game, and now I have to change everything up. So I feel like I have a lot of freedom to bring what I want to and bring what I can, and then just, it's not like I'm just getting told to play a certain way, right? Yeah.
Is the bot lane competitive in NA from the scrims you've played so far?
Sorry, what do you mean?
I gather the bot lane's strong generally.
Oh, I mean, we haven't scrim every team so far. I think some of the bot lanes were pretty decent, and some were not so great. I feel like we should be amongst the top for sure. If not, I will be very surprised.
Did you guys do any boot camping anywhere before the season started?
Yeah, in December we went to China, and then there were some issues, so we went to Korea.
Oh, right, I recall.
Or
Yeah.
I think it was about 2 weeks. We went home for Christmas, and now I just got back to LA here a week ago.
So how's NA solo queue?
I mean, I have faith. I'm still climbing. I think I just got to Diamond 1 today, so I'm just saying I hope it gets better, but my teammates tell me it doesn't, so I'm a bit worried. But I think it's like a mixed problem, because matchmaking has just been fucked up for over a year, and it's insane that there's nothing being done to fix it when literally everyone is complaining about it. So that's an issue, and then I guess NA is also just, I don't know, the player skills maybe a bit low. I don't really know.
Actually, there's something I could say briefly on that, which is like, this is one of the problems that Riot runs into when they try to make the game. So like they pretend like they can balance for both people, the pro player and the solo queue player who's just a public guy. Because in theory, the way the matchmaking system works is actually genius if you're a normal pleb guy just in like gold or whatever. Because basically what it does, as far as I know, is it doesn't try to give you the most even match. It tries to give you, like, I can't remember what the percentage breakdown is, but basically, part of the time you get a better team against you, part of the time you get a better team on your team. And the logic is, obviously, you're going to win a lot of the games where you have the easier team, but then the games where you're in the really hard match is going to test, are you actually better than the rank that you're in now? Like, are you better than gold 2 or whatever? And if you are, it's going to, you're going to get 60% win rate, and you're going to move up to gold 1. And then eventually, when you cap out to 50% or lower, you're going to find what your real level is, right? The problem is that system's terrible at the pro level, especially when people aren't playing to find out, well, am I really good at League of Legends? Like, they know they are, they're pro players. So the pro player wants every solo queue game to be a proper game. Like if we played five-a-side football with a bunch of people who are competitive, people would get really angry if I got to pick all the best players on my team and you had all the shit players. Like, you'd want it to be fair so you could have a proper game. So I feel like it's just an example of where you can't really balance for both. And I'm going to guess Riot thinks that the moneymaker's balancing for Joe Blogs, not Kobbe, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's definitely very frustrating. Like I could talk a long time about this, but it's just the fact that it's not the same game. Like, and that's why I feel like the practice is just very not good compared to what some people think. Because when I go into a solo queue, I know that I have to play different than I would in an LCS game if I want to win at least.
Sure.
If I want to just practice and do the same, I can do that, but I will probably lose because it's in solo queue you can't really farm that much because let's say normally I would go to farm a lane. In solo queue I have to group with the team because I know they're really not smart and they're just gonna go fight.
So are the in-houses still happening?
I haven't tried any in-houses in NA yet. There were some in EU before Worlds.
Because like the whole thing was that you can stream the in-houses now, right? So they removed the impediment, correct, to potentially having them during time, players playing in them, right? Because you can monetize those now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I haven't read too much about it.
But you actually haven't participated. Have you heard of any in-houses that have been happening in NA?
I haven't heard of anything going on while I've been here for a week.
My God. All right, I'm going to ask everybody now that we have on this preview show whether they've heard about these in-houses, because this was part of the whole issue with NA was that people are saying, "Oh man, we can't play these in-houses because then we can't stream them, so we can't monetize them even with the lower pings, right?" And everybody was saying, "Well, if we had in-houses, man, NA would be a lot better because we could avoid NA solo queue." Are you kidding me? We actually, from November until now, have potentially stopped doing in-house scrims. That is insane to me.
But I'm pretty sure that was like one of the key topics when we had one of those NA
yes.
people on the show. I can't remember if it was Westrice or Darshan because it was just someone boring. That's all I remember in my brain. But that was a key thing they said. It was like they'd improve the level or whatever the hell. By the way, isn't that a thing?
You already gave up on the in-houses, NA. You already gave up. You complain about the ping. You whine about NA solo queue. And you already gave up on the in-houses. What is wrong with you? Like, this is just proof that you guys are here to collect a paycheck and not actually win. My mind is blown.
Anyway, how is it? Also, is it as bad as you thought playing on 60 ping? Do you get used to it?
I feel like it's very champion dependent. There's some games where I'm playing a champion and it doesn't matter too much, but on certain champions that requires a bit more skill, it's definitely a big change. Yeah. Especially if you come straight from Korea, it feels like a different game almost. So yeah, I think it's very champion dependent. But yeah, these in-houses, I mean, I guess I'm gonna ask someone because I just didn't hear anything. Like all I see on Twitch is these streamers playing scrims against each other. So
I mean, honestly, Twitch Rivals I actually think is something that could improve solo queue because a lot of the up and coming, seriously.
Doesn't Loco Doco play in that? What are you talking about?
No. Listen, hear me out. So there are a bunch of players that are either on academy teams or that are sort of low view streamers. And yeah, they're playing with people like Tyler One, but it gets up like these kids out like Tarzan when I was doing the last Twitch Rival had a very good performance. Now, I actually believe that Twitch Rivals because it's creating scrims for people and structure who would not normally have that.
Okay.
I actually think that it could be quite good for developing talent because otherwise these people are just stuck in like troll NA solo queue, and Twitch Rivals gives them a reason to join with the team for a month and actually practice in that environment. So
Twitch Rivals is like the foster home that you take these feral children that have just been grown up with the wolves.
Yes.
You bring them in.
Yes.
No, it's okay. It's okay. They're not going to take your food. It's all right. It's all right, Yasu.
You teach them human language. You teach them human language after they've been raised by the wolves. Yes, I am saying that it is a stepping stone that I actually think could be good because Twitch Rivals continues to run now with League of Legends, and so I actually think it could be a useful development tool. Now, do I think it's the best one? No, but I think it's better than not having anything.
Well, that remains to be seen. Anyway, that's pretty decent segment. Should we move on to the next person?
Yes, thank you for joining us, Kobbe.
Thank you.
We're to come
Thanks
back
for having me.
in a little bit with Zaboutine, everybody.
Cheers.
All right, welcome back. It's our second Cloud Connection segment brought to you by AT&T. Now with us is Immortals. They have returned to the LCS, and Zaboutine is their coach. So
Hello.
welcome.
All right.
Thanks for the invitation, guys.
It's all right. Now, I'll tell you, I will warn you, Monty. This, when we have players on, like you saw from the last segment, like Kobbe was fine, but, they need prompting on everything that you want them to say. You need to lead them down the path and set it up before you ask them something. Like I asked him, like, whether the bot lanes were competitive, and he was like, what's the concept of, like, fucking hell? So, but I will say this, right? Be prepared, because there are two sets of people in this world who you don't need to ask anything at all, which is French people who are coaches either for Splice or Optic, because it's the other way around. Anything you say, they're already ready with like a counter. They're trying to like explain it away. Like, no, you got to understand the way my team is though. And it's this player. I know he looks bad, but actually he's good. If you think like if you invert the number, it's a 9 upside down. And then like, so like they're already prepared with everything. So already I want to start out, and we're going to come in hot here, Zaboutine, because I like to test where we're at here. Right. When I heard about this lineup, I actually think most of the players in this lineup are good. I think some of them are even underrated. But there is one player who we have to discuss, which is the mid laner, right? Because with the rest of the team, with all the players coming in, it's like, yeah, it's a pretty good lineup you put together. You get Swaz, like legend, Xmithie, legend. I thought Hakuo was always a pretty underrated player. Altec's been decent enough. But Iker, the last time I saw him, I didn't watch him almost at all when he was over in Europe recently in the Challenger scene. But when I saw him on Elements, like, I'm not going to say he was absolutely terrible, but he wasn't good that way. Like, he wasn't someone else.
Obviously, he wasn't.
This is going to be one of the next great players. Something. So give us some insight. Like, why is this guy on the team?
So the first thing is he was playing in LDRC. I mean, the team has been super dominant in LFL. I mean, you don't want to compare LFL and LCS. Obviously, there is a gap in between. But at the same time, all the experts say, oh, man, any team from any region that's not NA will make playoff in NA, right? So, like, they have been super dominant. And because they were so good, they've been screaming a lot of, like, top EU teams. So I've got a lot of, like, scrim insights about him playing super well in scrims against like the top EU mid laners, like actually players that went to Worlds. They were even screaming during Worlds because the French tournament ends up like later than even the World Championship. So
that's how lazy the French are. Even the league ends after bloody Worlds.
So
needed to finish their smoke break.
We are just looking at all the potential mid laners, and we're looking at all the pro views. We kind of did an analysis of like who is the most the play style that we wanna develop, and how we want to play the game. And I wanted someone that's very flexible to work with, that's very has a wide champion pool, because I felt like, for instance, last year, Diamante was a great example of a player that had few struggles on some playstyles, but because of the diversity he could provide, and the way that the team was drafting, they got a significant edge by the end of the year. Like when they find out the system where they can kind of like trick everybody in draft, it was super hard to play against them. And I was thinking, why not doing the same? And like there was different prospects on the market. So obviously, like people are gonna ask me, there is Eugene, right? Pobelter, there is Damonte. So we were discussing with both of them. I feel like then it kind of comes down to kind of synergies. I know, for instance, like Soaz has been backing up for LDLC at some point when he left him and Misfits parted way, and Eka and Soaz had a huge like click when they played together. So I was discussing with Soaz even prior to the season just about like what he thinks about his motivation, his future. Like not even like discussing about the position at Immortals, but also like what do you want to do with your career? Like, because I think that the last 2 years have been pretty rough for him. The first year at Fnatic with Bripo, and the second one at Misfit that didn't work. And he was like, yeah, I feel like he actually said like maybe he should have stood more for like his idea about the game. I was like, okay. And my idea came kind of naturally, is like, if I get an NA jungle, maybe I can import 2 Europeans. One of them can be Soaz, and someone that Soaz would like to work with, because I feel like Soaz is the type of player that if you don't play through his idea, it's going to be hard for him to express himself. And so instead of...
I actually find when you don't play his way, he expresses himself quite loudly.
I mean, that can be, but I'm French. I do the same when I'm not happy, right? That's kind of it's great in the French culture to complain and try to find problems where there's not. And I mean, that's easier as well for me to handle. For instance, my experience is it's easier for me to handle a player that's going to be very vocal and very bold about his opinion than, for instance, having like Asian culture, like a Korean, that's not gonna phrase them, right? It's harder for me to get the actual feedback and the truth out of a Korean player than getting it from a French that's gonna come to my face like, this is so fucking bullshit, right? I'd rather have that. So it's not I pick French because I wanted French specifically. It's just among the Europeans. I was discussing with other European mid laners, but like you have to understand as well, like there's a lot of Europeans that just want to play in LEC or even like in EU Masters. They consider NA like worse than EU Masters. Like you've seen all the tweets, right? So I came to Eka and I was like, what do you think about your career? And he was actually very happy in LFL and he was very happy at his team. And he didn't really feel like leaving. And I was like, what do you feel about like maybe getting a team around an NA jungle and SOAS? It was like, oh, I really want to play with SOAS. I really want to play with SOAS. I feel like my champion pool is good. From the insight of scrims I have, you won't have a trouble in lane versus the other laners. As much as people would love to see Damonte is a lane kingdom player, it's not the case, right? Damonte has not like being super dominant in lane. So I was looking for people that want to play together around the same idea of the game. And the player that clicked the most was Eka. I understand why people have doubts about him, and they are legitimate. I understand why people are mad at me for not picking an NA player. But for instance, right now, AK is not here. So the scrims are starting in like 45 minutes. My mid laner is Insanity, right? He was playing in Team Liquid Academy. I'm working with him like 2 hours a day because I believe in NA talent. It's just you have to build a team and it's your 0 for Immortals. And around the idea of the game that I have for 2020, the meta and stuff, and the player I had available, AK was the best fit. But it could have been Damonte, but it's a matter of like you come, you speak to the player, it clicks, you have you look at the pro views, you send them like option. One is still waiting for another answer, one is ready. You're like, okay, the one you like both. It happens that way as well on the market, and people want to ignore that. But that's an actual constraint. It's like maybe you're gonna wait on one player saying, "Oh, I'm gonna wait for everybody giving me an answer," and then both are gone, and then you're fucked, right? You're completely screwed. So
was there actually possibility to keep Crown, or was that already a done deal? Did he want to go, or did he get bought for a lot of money? What was the deal there?
And so with Crown, I think it's kind of mutual agreement. I feel like this is kind of a coach-player relationship thing. Is I really love Minho, but I feel like, for instance, he went to CLG and CLG got Song, and I feel like Crown is gonna perform so much better on a Korean coach. So for me, it makes sense because it's important to recognize when you can't do something, and I don't think that I can get the best out of Korean players in my current state of being a coach because I still, even after 2 years, I lack of experience, and there is already a cultural shock between me, a European, going into NA. I'm too bold. Sometimes players are too. I don't want to say they're too soft. It's just like there is this cultural shock of me just hitting them with like concepts or saying this is wrong because this is not the way like people do that in the US. But it's even harder when you have a European coaching an American team with Americans working with Koreans, and it's just sometimes gets hard. And I feel like I'm super happy for Minho that he's in CLG because the guy deserves to be in an environment when he can express himself, and I feel like Song is gonna get the best out of him, and I'm not sure I would have been able to do this.
So are you the GM of Immortals as well, more or less? Like, how responsible were you? Because it sounds like from this, you're very responsible for crafting this roster. Because I want to talk about that process. Because is that true? Fair to say that you have a very big say in this?
I mean, it's so for me, it's a mistake if I don't have a say in it. It's like I'm gonna work with the players. Then it comes down, there is different aspects, like telling like all the constraint you have when you want to get a player. You have the availability of the player, like the talent is available in the market.
Right.
You have like the envelope, how much money you have to get the players. Like for instance, not every team can do what EG did, right? And I know that most of the even audience understand that, like getting Svenskeren, Hazel, and all these big names and bang. And
I mean, you got Xmithie,
obviously, but you understand that they got them from Cloud9, right? And I think that's like buying players from top teams has a price, right? So not everybody can do that, and I think that's very important for the people that understand that it's not just a Pokemon, right? We all go into the grass and we just catch the player that we want. It's an availability. Every player has a price. Every player has preference. Every player wants to play with some other players. They're like, oh, who's on your roster? And you start day one with no player, and you build up. So obviously, I make the choice based on like playstyle, attitude, profile, like human profile. But at the end of the day, it's a discussion between me, my general manager, Keaton, who's making the decision as well about who he wants to work with and who doesn't want to work with. It's kind of the only thing is we've been working with Keaton. Keaton. So I was working with Romain back then, and Keaton was the sidekick of Romain pretty much. So we've been working together since 2 years. So we know each other and we know exactly what we're good at. And then we come back to our upper management. We come with an idea of, oh, we have this list of player. What are you guys thinking in terms of spending, in terms of like plan, in terms of gameplay? This is what we want to do. Then the management comes. They don't understand exactly the like piece by piece every player potential, right? But it comes like, what is this type of roster? What we can achieve within the year? What can we achieve within the 2-3 years? What our contract look like? How long do you want to sign these players? Who are you developing in the academy? You just ask us questions and we have to answer them, right? So on the sport aspect, I take like ownership on all these things, but on the player development, building, branding, and all these things, Keaton has like he has the last word, right? He's my manager at the end of the day.
So you started, like, when you talk about most of the way roster construction is done in NA, obviously it's different in Europe because you're not playing with the, you have enough players not to really worry about the import rule, but it's very important that you nail down your resident players first. And that's what you guys, I think, did with Xmithie, because you have to play with there's a pool of like top tier resident pieces, right? And you have to get one of those so that you know which players you can import. In this case, Aka and SOAS. Now, you also have Arrow, so I'm curious how you're going to use him potentially, or like swap everything around in terms of your the rest of your roles. So can you explain the process of like, you wanted to land Xmithie first because he's like, one of the top NA junglers, right? And then build around him. So what was the process for you, like, selecting all the rest of the players on this roster?
So I had discussions with different positions at the same time, because there was very good junglers as well available on the market, right? Broxa was available, Xerxes switched team, you had Selfmade, you had other
right,
players.
but these are imports.
Yeah, loads of players.
Right, so you already have to make the decision, and you have to explore both routes of, do we import jungle or not, right? So we explored both, and we kind of started making decision after we knew if Xmithie would be on the market or not. And when we knew Xmithie was on the market, it became a priority because I and the management really wanted to work with Jake. So we just went on Xmithie, we discussed with him, and then you evaluate the likelihood of it happening. And once we knew it was like very likely to happen, then I kind of removed my discussion with the NA jungle, and I switched to getting solo lanes from abroad or from NA. As I say, like for top lane, my eyes were definitely on abroad. For mid lane, I was completely set on getting someone who wants to play the game kind of the modern way. I don't know if it's not really linking on players, but more like horizontal players, playing like Romo and stuff like this. And so I went and just checked everybody, and eventually it was Aka. But as I said, it could have been Damonte. It's a matter of like option, timeline, and stuff.
Because I heard basically, like, I know now TSM claim that, like, oh, we were always looking at Dardoch. Like, during the off-season, the rumor for a long time during Worlds was that Xmithie was going to be on TSM and that was going to be the move. And then I heard basically when that became uncertain, and then people were like trying to see, like, well, can we get Svenskeren, or do we get Xmithie, or do we get, like everyone's rosters were just changing overnight, because again, you obviously build around the pieces that are the best pieces. You don't just get 4 people and then just fill a 5th guy in. So in terms of getting Xmithie, right, you've had a pretty good lineup of junglers now, mate. You had Meteos before, now you've had Xmithie. These are basically like the 2 best junglers ever from NA.
And I had Dardoch in academy.
And you're Dardoch.
I think Dardoch is very underrated as well.
I mean, you didn't put him in the LCS squad very much, mate, so you obviously underrated. Fuck out of him, didn't you?
I mean, there is more than just the level of a player, right?
Yeah, there always is, I know, isn't there? But all I'm saying is, when you had your money and you had to put where your mouth was, he was on the bench, wasn't he?
No, you made me say something I
He was
didn't.
picking splinters out of his ass.
You're assuming it's an attitude-based thing, but you can have a preference of a player, not saying, like, you can prefer one player over the other, and the other not being bad, That's kind of thing.
Well, anyway, I prefer Xmithie over Dardoch. So what do you think about Xmithie?
I mean, I think this player is actually really good at the game. I think he's very smart. He has a very different profile from a lot of players because he has a lot of experience, and he's playing on a server where if you play a lot of solo queue as a jungle, you don't really improve. And it's consistently proven through the new up-and-coming junglers that need to kind of reshape their whole playstyle around competitive because there is not that much of an immature scene in NA. So it's a different, like the interaction you have with such a player is different, because when it comes, it's kind of the same with SOAS. When they come to your team, they already know what they need and what they want. And I think as a management, it's up to you to try to find the best way to let them express themselves. But as an individual, from what I've done with him, right, as I say, I don't even have my players yet, the other ones, but from the few I've seen, is definitely one of the greatest players I've been working with. But let's see how it goes, because the season is long, right?
Sure. No, I think the funny thing is, right, the one thing I will say about the jungle role particularly, because they have literally redesigned jungle as a role, and it's where it even is in the hierarchy in the game, and even the camps that you have and how fast they spawn. They've done it every single season pretty much in League of Legends. I have mad respect for anyone who can be like a legendary player, but at that role. Because you see, like every year, there's a jungler that no one thought was good before. Suddenly he's like a top jungler. There's always a guy that drops off loads. And people act like this is football. And we're all playing like, well, he's a left winger. It's like, no, the role changes. So when you're someone like a Meteos, like Xmithie, and you can keep going back to the top, I have mad respect. And I'll even say as well, I noticed people kept talking last year that like, well, since Team Liquid's the super team, if I had to replace anyone, the two they always said was Impact and Xmithie. First of all, Impact, that goes without saying. This guy's earned his place at this point in time. How many times does he have to overcome the same thing? But Xmithie himself, I thought actually ended up getting underrated, because to me, yes, certain elements of the way the game was played at times didn't, like early in spring, for example, didn't necessarily fit his strengths. But he was still the best jungler. Like, you look at the way he was able to fill all the gaps in the team. Like, I think it must be a dream to play with that guy. Like, he can, if that's him in a down year, I want to see him when it's the year that fits his game style.
Well, it's also, I think that Liquid was very successful in building around Xmithie's strengths, and really, like, I think that they had a lot of pieces to sort of focus on late game team fighting. And a lot of Liquid's issues, I think, is the meta sort of drifted away from that, right? Like, there is much more of an early game priority here. And that's the reason why they have Broxa now, right? Is they wanted somebody who is more aggressive early. They wanted somebody who could have the mechanics to make plays in the early game. Now, that needs to be seen as to whether that's actually going to bear fruit for TL. But I think Xmithie's major problem that I saw was that simply that the meta itself drifted away from his style. Imagine if we had a time machine and could take Team Liquid back a couple of years. I think that we'd be having a very different conversation about their international performance.
Yeah, the game has kind of shifted. I think more than jungle, I should say the laners, the way the laning plays out is kind of different. Because there is the plating, the laner don't really want to leave their lane.
Which has been nerfed now. So do you think it's going to be a little bit less aggressive this season? Because the changes have been to sort of, they've pulled it back a little bit from that sort of like plating element, right?
The plating, competitively, the plating was kind of a trap, because if you overstay on the map, usually you end up being caught up. That's kind of like, I think the problem of Liquid for me last year was you have. And that's funny that people say replace Impact or Xmithie, because at some point, where do you get the resources from, right? You already have Jensen, who really is like lane-focused player. He has a mechanical edge, so you better use it, right? Because he's very good on the laning. But if you play for the laning, you don't really move on the map, right? And at the same time, you have probably the best bot lane in the region and one of the best like in the West. And you want to play around it. So you have two positions that you want to play around. So that's like, if you had like, let's try, take, I don't know, the Shy and you put it up in Team Liquid, doesn't work, right? Because you can't have like 3 lanes getting funneled from the... So it was really hard, I think, for Jake. And I think it would be very hard for any jungle to find exactly his space between getting his own resources to be able to contribute to the game, but as well, always being serviceable for both lanes that need a lot of resources. And I think that has been what, like the exploit we tried to use, for instance, at Optic playing against TL. So I was very happy to get like Xmithie, because I think in a team that understands how the jungle plays out and plays a little bit more around like what the jungler has in mind, you get a better early game. You get more lead in early game. And I think that's something that we try to build for this year at Immortals that Liquid couldn't really do, because Xmithie has a very strong idea on what he wants to play the game. But I think Peter Doubleleaf has a really strong idea on how he wants to play the early game, and Jensen at the same time. So it's probably too many voices. I think Broxa is a good fit in that regard for TL. But yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like Xmithie is straight super underrated player, because what he says in game is so important. I've barely heard any player in my experience that said, "Oh no, guys, let's do that instead." Or I think this is the right play, and this is actually the right play. He has kind of the overview. He sees the big picture as like the coaching staff is really good at like looking and say, "Yeah, you should have done that." But while playing, he sees that, and that's what makes him like so good over the years, regardless of the meta.
All right, what about this then? So we talked about your team a little bit. what's the one move that happened in Team Liquid is obviously Xmithie left and then they've replaced him with Broxah. What are your thoughts on that? Like, can you speculate as to what you think the impact of Broxah will be?
It's very hard because maybe Broxah is a good fit because his draw is going to be very comparable to what he was doing in Fnatic, which is play borderline only for the lanes, and he has very good laners. But on the other side, I don't know how much you lose from not having Xmithie on the vocal, because I don't know how much impact Jensen and Doublelift are talking. I don't have experience with these players, so it's very hard for me to rate. But say it's at least from the you lose a lot from not having Xmithie under your vocal during the game. So I hope that they can like cope with that loss. And Broxah is probably mechanically super like at peak right now. After like his few years. So if he fits into the playstyle of Liquid, it's gonna be dangerous in the dangerous team to play. But the adaptation cost is gonna be huge, I think, for them, especially since he's not here like week 1. I'm not sure that Liquid's gonna be like insane in Spring Split.
But Spring Split doesn't matter anymore, so it's fine, right?
I mean,
that's that's part of the changes to the system. So I have to ask you, Zaboutine, are there NA in-houses happening right now?
No, there is not, and I'm very, very sad about it.
What are you guys doing? Like, as a coach, shouldn't you be one of the people who's like encouraging this, considering everybody tells everyone else how trash NA solo queue is?
So the reality is, who wants to maintain a system that's profitable? Do you want to use your own time that you could use with your player to maintain a system that's going to favor other players from other teams? And
why would it favor other players from other teams?
Because it means that the coach can work. The coach of the team B, team A, coach of team A is working like 2 hours a day on making Excel sheets and making sure the players are in the lobbies and stuff and monitoring all the thing. And the other one is working on draft and watching VODs and talking with the players. But the players of the team B are still doing the in-houses with the team A. That's so who wants to take this workload? Knowing that we're all very busy, no one wants to take this workload.
So I have an idea for you. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Why doesn't the LCS Players Association, how about you all players chip in a little bit of money, and then you hire someone to manage the in-houses?
I mean, this is completely doable. As I said, it's like it's so the thing about NA solo queue, and there is other way of fixing that, even within a team. That's not that big of an issue. And at the end of the day, as much as there is a correlation between the quality of solo queue and the quality of the league, the problem is much bigger than that. I'm pretty sure I don't have time to like express myself on this. Invite me another time. I would be much happy to talk about the big NA problem. But you can shift from solo queue to in-houses, and the problem is not going to change that much, because you're not going to have this 14-year-old Korean guy that plays only Talon with like Predator and roams around the map, and this is a new meta trend that everybody follows that ends up in LCK. This doesn't exist. The amount of creativity, the culture of the way you want to play the game, the amount of opponent and stuff like this, you don't replicate it from just like having in-houses. So you're going to have still a gigantic gap between EU solo queue and a solo queue, Korean solo queue change. Your chat's very aggressive today.
This is an interesting problem. All right, I think we should be good.
Are we back?
Yeah, I think we're back.
Hello.
Okay, sorry about that.
So
did it cut all of that off, by the way?
Yeah, just the end of it.
Yeah, I was just saying the gigantic gap between Korean, Chinese, European solo queue and NA solo queue is not just going to be fixed by having in-houses that are stream.
Sure, I'm not saying it's just going to fix it. I'm just putting out there that, like, in my opinion, it should be the LCS Players Association that is trying to actively solve these issues. And if people are serious about it, then the players themselves, considering all of, what was it, like the average salary or the mean salary right now in LCS is like $300K or something. Like, if all the players threw in a small amount of money, very small, you could literally hire people to operate in-house scrims or come up with a system in terms of inviting other people. Like you say, there's no creativity. Well, what about up-and-coming players also coming into these in-houses? That's my point, is like, if the players want to do something, they should just do it through the Players Association, and you should try something at least instead of just sitting there and not doing anything.
Okay, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
Why did you ask Kobbe about it? Why asking me?
When I asked Kobbe, I did ask Kobbe about this.
Because I'm not part of the Players Association.
No. I just had this idea. So Zaboutine, I just had this idea right now.
Yeah, why you're not running the in-houses? I give you an answer why I'm not running.
No, you're absolutely right.
You're like,
but
why not the player? But then ask the players because
I will ask the players, Zaboutine. The reason why I said that and why I had the idea right now is because you said, "Oh, like it's too much for the coaching staff," which is totally reasonable. It's totally a reasonable take, right? That's why I was saying. That's why I had that idea, because if that's the reason, then I was presenting a possible solution. Not saying that you should do it. Don't take it that way.
It was just the first part of this, the discussion that was about like why not like running them. So obviously, I give an answer.
It's all right.
It's just
Anyway.
overall. Anyway, it's like I do understand, and as I say, I feel like the why NA as a region is worse than the other ones is a very interesting topic that's just not solved with just in-houses.
I
But
understand.
for sure, great idea. I'm gonna go to my player just after and say, guys, you should do that. Monty is brilliant because it's actually really it's actually a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, why not try it? But yes, I understand that it's not your responsibility. All right, thanks for joining us, Zaboutine. Good luck to Immortals this weekend. We're going to be back in just a few minutes with Sven from Cloud9. So I will see you then. All right, we're back with our next Cloud Connections guest by AT&T. It's Sven, not Zaboutine. I'm going to fix that right now. He's from Cloud9. He used to be on TSM. He's pretty famous as a European AD carry. He escaped the talent suppression machine. Was your talent adequately suppressed?
Yeah, I will say so.
Well, here's the thing, Sven. People are going to think, right, that like, because when we had earlier on, we had Kobbe on, and obviously we asked him, like, mate, you're literally just walking into the same shoes. He was just a like Danish AD carry, comes over from Europe, joins TSM, and then potentially gets crushed, right? But here's the angle. There's another part to the narrative that makes perfect sense, which is what's the org if you're a Danish player whose talent gets suppressed in TSM that you go to get it all back? It's Cloud9. Svenskeren. He was the MVP when he left TSM, so this is the right team, right?
Yeah, I think the story tells itself here, so I can see your point, yeah. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Right. On a serious note, though, what would you say your issues were when you played in TSM? Because even at the times when you were playing all right, you had a lot of the scrutiny. I noticed a lot of the TSM fans did pretty much scapegoat you. So what do you think the difference is in playing that team from past teams where you had so much success was?
Okay, so I think there's two different iterations, right? There's 2018 and 19, right? And in 18, I think the biggest issues we had was the jungle position. I think Mike Young wasn't what we thought he was. Initially, I wanted Xmithie on the team, but Parf and Bjergsen were convinced Mike Young was a more talented player, a player that would work harder, and he was more motivated to play. They thought Xmithie was kind of like I wouldn't say washed up, but like a player that wasn't motivated to play. And Mike Young and Bjergsen had a lot of dookie going on, and Bjergsen liked him, so we went with Mike Young. But I think Mike Young was he wasn't what a jungle should be. He didn't talk very much. He's a very beta personality, doesn't talk much, doesn't shot call much, doesn't make any plans for himself. He kind of just plays on instinct. And the other thing is Mike Young, and Xmithie and I, and Hanser didn't work together at all. Hanser always wanted to be
Too
strong
alpha.
side. Yeah, basically. I mean, you can say that, right? But he didn't want to be weak side almost ever. He didn't want to play tanks. He said he couldn't learn on tanks, and Xmithie had a hard time working with that. And basically, Mike Young created this like pattern where he just played the same champions, same path every single game, and at some point it didn't work out anymore. And yeah, I think that team had a lot of issues in general. We could not play more than a few champions each role because then our loop just stopped working, and then it fell apart once the meta changed, which was playoffs. And we all know what happened in spring playoffs in 18, right? We got crushed by Clutch Gaming, who was a terrible team. I still think so. And I had a terrible best of 5, I'll admit that, but there was so much more going on that you don't see in that split. And then for the 19
Would you like to tell us about it?
I don't think I have enough time in this 30 minutes to talk about it, but
how convenient! How convenient!
This is like a short version, right?
Exactly, Monty. It's like fucking Heart of Darkness or something. You'd have to go into all the stuff of like every day.
Heart of Darkness is a very
hey look.
Heart of Darkness is a very short book. It's a very short book. It's like 100
you're talking
pages.
League of Legends players. The book itself is long enough, isn't it? Like they watch anime. So
I mean, for like the whole
about 2019.
I'll need like 2 hours and a half to talk about all this. But
Give
like
us some thoughts on last year, though.
for last year, I think so. Coming into 19 spring split, we were supposed to have Greg as our starter, and then he had wrist issues. So Parf and Reginald and all this decided that we go with Acadian. Fair enough, right? Then after spring split, we had a whole split with Acadian. It went fine. We went to finals, 5 games. We lost game 5, blows, right? Then I said, it sucks that John Greg has had wrist issues, but now that he's healed, he shouldn't play for the main team anyways. It just sucks. Just play with Acadian. We have 5 months of synergy experience with him. He is as good as Greg, if not better at this point. He has more synergy with the teammates. Same champion pool. Mechanics are equal or if not better. But everyone insisted we give Greg a fair chance, right? And that's cool, right? To be nice guys, but you can't be nice guys in this industry in summer split, right? That's what spring split is for. And it just sucks that he had wrist issues. So it sounds like kind of cold. I know that, but and I'm good friends with Greg, so don't take it the wrong way. But it's just how it is, right? You can't be a nice guy in summer split. But we gave Greg a fair chance. Whatever. We shared time with Acadian and Greg. That's half scrims for each, half stage games, and then we took like 4 or 5 weeks to decide. And we took Rift Rivals as like a test run for both junglers, and then we chose Acadian. And then after 4 weeks, we chose Spica as our starter for the playoffs because we had some scrim issues.
Internal issues, sure.
A little bit of that too, I suppose. And then having 2 junglers in one single split, followed by playoffs coming up in summer, the important playoffs, I guess you could say, kind of hurt our mid jungle synergy a lot and our support jungle synergy a lot, which is really important, which showed in this series against, well, Clutch, funny enough. They want to stop us again. And yeah, I think it was a mess to have so many junglers, and I think looking back at it, we should have had Acadian the whole year, all 10 months or whatever, right? All until the end. And if it didn't work, just
All right,
sucks.
so who is making these decisions? Tell me who is. Name the names.
Coach, your boy Zix. Your boy Zix from TLG.
Zix,
Is he on TSM anymore, mate?
I mean, so for the Acadian thing and Greek, I didn't have anything to say. It was just decided. After Rift Rivals, we played against Origin, Fnatic, and G2, right? We lost all the games. I think we won one game against someone. And then after Rift Rivals, we scrim on the Monday after the weekend is over. And then I get told, oh yeah, we're playing with Acadian. I'm like, okay, that's it. I didn't have anything to say about it. I didn't even get asked, like, who do you think played better? What do you think? And that's how it was. So that's how it was decided. And then that's how it went down.
That angle is so whack as well, because as you say, the only real reason to do that, like the part that never made sense to me, is I remember when I heard they were shifting to Greg, I went and I pulled up all the stats and I was looking, and as you said, it's like, they even play the same champions. Like, what? Like, I thought, oh, maybe it's that angle of like, you're going to go like Korean style. You know, one guy plays one style of jungle, the other one plays. There wasn't even like a reason in the game. Like, best case scenario, you would just be in theory just as good as you were in the spring split. Like you already had a championship level team. Like what a weird choice to make.
Yeah, I mean, if you have like Ambition and Howard, right? You have like one guy who plays jungle Ezreal, he plays like these Camille kind of champions, and one guy plays Gragas, Sejuani, and Maokai, right? Like, whatever, right? Tank players. Then it makes sense. But Greek and Acadian share champion pools. The mechanics are both the same, somewhat, in my opinion. Their communication is a little bit different, but not too big of a deal. And I just thought, since Bjergsen Acadian and Xmithie Acadian, that mid jungle and support jungle have synergy built already, it would be better to keep Acadian for the whole year, because I thought there's no big upside, and the fair chance thing is nice and all, but I don't think that's like really how it works in summer split. That's what spring split is for, like I said earlier. So it just kind of feels like we were being nice for no reason. And
people will think, well, I saw Acadian playing that split and he was bad. Yeah, I wonder why his mental was broken. He knew like any second he fucked up that they were going to bring another guy in. Like there's I know everyone wants to believe, like I know years ago, famously it was even TSM who said it, that they were going to have subs for every position and everyone would have to compete for their spot. Like, let's be real, most teams don't do that. Like that's actually pretty rare that people really bring the academy player up and put him instead of the main player. That's why Cloud9 was actually legendary when they did that in season 8. But like generally, I don't think a lot of players would react very well to that. Like you're already in a League of Legends game. Don't get that many chances on stage to show how good you are. If you have the pressure of like, I'm going to get taken out of the game the second I do bad, like that could destroy a lot of players' mental state, I think.
Yeah, it definitely could. I mean, Acadian and Greek worked together and they seemed like they were friendly at least, but I think it could be a lot of pressure for someone like them to know that they have like 4 or 5 weeks of summer split to decide who's the main starter. And then you go on stage, you fuck up something, and you're like, fuck, man, they're thinking like, shit, now I'm going to get replaced. I'm just going to farm the rest of the game now and not do anything because I'm afraid I'm going to get replaced by Grey or Arcadian, you know? And yeah, I don't think it helps that they have played with that in mind. I don't think it helped their performance, at least.
So I want to talk.
Okay, yeah, go on.
No, I want to talk a little bit because you've been in Korea for the last month-ish, right?
Yep.
And you've been there. You guys went really early, and I know from talking to people at Cloud9 that you and Vulcan have just been grinding out games, right? And so what has your experience been? Because I know you as a player have always been very much about practice, and you really value having that. So when you have Vulcan now, who seems to be of a very similar mindset to you, how is that process of like getting that synergy up? Because you've spent more time than most other teams like in that practice environment. You were there before even the rest of the team got there and started scrimming, right? You were just in a solo queue grinding.
Yeah, so Phil and I, Vulcan, went to Korea in December for 3 weeks, a little bit more actually. Just play solo queue together, build some synergy, both in real life and in the game, right? And then we went home for Christmas, New Year's, and I came back in January to scrim with the team for 2 weeks and a half, and then we went to LA. And we were just playing solo queue. We played 15, 20 games a day at first, and the solo queue in Korea is just
That's
so
a lot
much
of
better.
games.
It's a lot of games. But I mean, the thing is, in Korea, there's no queue time. It's like 2 to 5 minutes at the very max at high elo. You can get up at 2 a.m. You'll play against Faker and Doinby and Rookie, and you're like, oh, holy fuck, Deft, and you're like, oh, Viper, whoa. And then you play these high quality games. They are not very long. They're 25, 30 minutes. The queue is 1 minute, and then you get easily 15 games, 20 games a day, and the games are high quality, and it feels like it's very rewarding compared to NA, especially. EU is also lower quality in Korea, but not as bad as NA. So solo queue was just for team bonding, I suppose, for me and him, since we're the new guys on the team. Blabber, Licorice, and Nisky have some built-in synergy already, and we're like the new guys. And then for January, it was our scrim bootcamp where we scrim and do all the team stuff. So yeah.
So how'd it go? How's the synergy with Vulcan? Like, what was the
I think it's
effectiveness?
I think
Do you feel comfortable coming in? Like,
yeah, I do. I think, well, so far our scrims, we haven't scrimmed the best teams yet. In NA, we only scrimmed against EG and CLG so far, but the results have been really good. As for our synergies together, it's been pretty good. We were high LP in Korea, like 1.2k or something like that, and at that point, you play against all the good players. Once you're past 1k LP, you play against all the good players at night. From like midnight to 3 a.m. is where all the LCK players and the LPL players are queuing up. So you play against like Faker and Doinby and Viper and Deft, and these players are like in every single game, right? You play against a pro player or an academy player, trainees they're called in Korea. There's these people like this guy from Gumayusi from SKT. He's really good. The average game of solo queue is just so much better that you build synergy and you get tested more, and I think it's really healthy for a new duo queue like us to go there.
So the LCK is starting in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
From your scrims, who are the teams you think are going to be good in LCK?
Well, Africa Freaks won the Cup, which I thought was surprising. We had scrims booked with them,
Keen
but
was
they canceled
insane.
because they're making finals. We were supposed to scrim them, but they're like, "Hey guys, we made finals, so we have to cancel." I'm like, "Okay." Then they won, and I was actually surprised. I think Keen is really good. I think Spirit is really good. He has this like MLXG kind of thing where he makes some whack plays sometimes, but they work out sometimes. He's got a little conflict, but a little bit less. I think Griffin is actually not bad.
The new Griffin lineup?
Yeah, I think DRX has good carries. Jovi and Deft. I like Deft a lot. I think he's really, really good. SKT is gonna be good, of course. They didn't change that much, so yeah. I think those are the best teams. But
Okay.
I don't know how much Castle Cup really matters for the season, but yeah.
One question I actually had, since obviously this guy's also going to be playing for a new team now, is what was the situation like when he played with Xmithie in TSM? Because he was one of the player changes where a lot of people hoped that would fix things. Like obviously you and Xmithie had your issues when it was in Season 8. Coming into Season 9, like Xmithie's been touted as the top NA support for many years, but he has a reputation as a shot caller. Like, was there some sort of a disconnect? What did you make of your partnership with him?
It was good at first. I think we played a solo queue, a duo queue. We had a good synergy both in real life and in the game at first, and it was very nice. But I think Xmithie suffered a lot from the fact that we had junglers rotating all the time. I think he had a really hard time. The support jungle synergy and helping out a mid laner was really bad because he had to rebuild with Greg, and then again with Acadian, and then with Spica in playoffs, and it kind of hurt our 4-man, the bot side, right? But I think at first he was really good. He has a lot of voice. He talks a lot, almost too much sometimes. He's very adamant when he says something, which is good, decisive, and he's a good engaged player. But I think the thing that he suffered the most was the jungle situation. It really hurt. I think his impact on the game, because junglers and supports have to base together, they have to roam together, they have to make the plays together, coordinate drakes, this kind of stuff. You know, the sweepers, the control wards, these kind of things are actually more important than it looks. You don't see it on the screen, but it matters more than you think. And I think that hurts Xmithie's performance the most and his impact on the game the most.
Obviously, this is like kind of like almost like one of those TV sports show angles. But when you had all that success when you were with Xmithie, and then to be fair, like even with Xmithie, it wasn't that great that year, but whatever, you'd had all those championships. Then when you go to other players, well, the problem is for people who don't know Xmithie's history, almost every AD carry he's ever played with became a really good AD carry, which doesn't mean he was doing it, but like it can't be a coincidence. The guy obviously has an amazing ability to get on the same page as someone, bring them in his style of play, all these things. So like, obviously that was an angle people took with. They were like, oh, you were just a product of Xmithie. Like he just propped you up, you know, he made you good. Right. That can't be entirely true, but there must have been some element of that. Like when you leave a player that you played with for so long, you see the differences, right?
Yeah, I mean, not to be that guy, but he was 8th place in LEC after we split up in summer. So there's that. But
André had to retire. He's a coach now.
He was too bad at that job, I guess.
Now he's just using his brain. You don't need to use the mechanics anymore. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So I think Xmithie helped me the most the first year. The first 6 months, he pushed me harder than anyone else did. He helped me improve so much in the first split. He was telling me like, "Why don't you talk? Fucking talk to me, you know? Give me something, right?" He was telling me, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this?" And I was telling him, "I'm doing this because of this." And he's like, "That's fucking retarded. Just do this instead, right?" And I was like, "Huh, this guy is really like, he's fucking choking me, like, tell me something, bro, like, talk to me, right?" And it helped me so much at first. He helped me get all the soul queue out of me and get all the competitive stuff into me, because back then the game was very macro, slow. You have to use this up here more than the fingers, right? And after like 6-7 months, I think we started being more of a duo, more than a he controls me kind of thing. And then as for Worlds, I think I was my own player from there on and onwards. And then for G2, we were a duo. We were finally like a 2-man unit, right? So it's true that he helped me. I think he helped me achieve my 15 form faster, but he didn't make me the player I am today solely, right? Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Sure.
So something like that, yeah. And then as for 2018, TSM wanted to remove Hanser from the team, and Mitty and I both stated we wanted to leave TSM, but they wanted to keep me and remove Mitty to open import slot to get a top laner. And then they imported BB, but they said they couldn't find any ADC players that were suitable, so they decided to keep me and therefore kick Mithy and separate our duo to get Broken Blade as an import, because there were too many problems with Hanser. So yeah, that's how that happened.
Does that mean you guys weren't like super tight on a personal level? Like, I mean, people would have thought, you know, you'd leave together and go back to Europe and both be in Origin or something, you know.
I mean, that's what I wanted, minus the Origin part. I wanted to leave. I said to Parf, he's the main guy I talked to, not Reginald. I said after 18 that even if we had one summer split and gone to Worlds, I didn't want to play in TSM or in NA for that matter. At that point, I wanted to just go back to EU. This wasn't worth it. I fucked up, you know, and Mitty wants to leave too. We talked about it, me and him, and we were on the same page. And then they said they listened to it. They came back and they said, "This is not gonna work. Everyone wants to remove Hanser from the team, management included. So we will remove one of you guys, and we will keep you," because they thought NA has some good supports. Like at the time, Xmithie and Bifrost were both on the market, and they could be bought out of the contracts. So they bought Xmithie from EcoFox, and then they said we couldn't find any suitable ADCs, so we were going to keep you on the team. And hire Broken Blade from the TCL.
So it wasn't your choice.
You're basically describing this whole thing is just like a Cloud Fiesta.
It's like you came to the parole board, like, yeah, I paid my debt to society. I'd like to be released now, and they were like, "I'm sorry, it's going to be another year. Like, come back next year." So, what? I thought you were going to choose where you go. It's because you were only like a 2-year contract or something, right?
Yeah. So when I joined, I got the whole speech that we don't hold players against their wills. If you don't want to leave, you can just leave. We have this whatever thing going on. I was like, oh yeah, that's what I heard from everyone else too, and that's what I believe in too, right? So cool. Not that it would matter anyways, because you don't have buyouts nowadays in most contracts or anything, so that's normal anyway, right? And then after the year was over, I said, I fucking hate it here. I hate solo queue. I hate living in LA. I don't have any friends here. All my people are back in Germany. All the people I know, my friends are in Denmark, time zone, like family, all this kind of stuff. Fuck this, right? And then since then, I've come to live with it, and I'm enjoying it now.
Yeah, sure.
Don't get me wrong. But back then, it was a big problem for me. Relationships, friends, family, all this kind of stuff. It was fucked up. And I said, I just want to go back. Even if we had done well, I don't want to be here. I'm sorry for ruining your team. I really said that to Parf. I remember the words in my head right now. And then, yeah, that's it. And then
it's all right. You got the last laugh in the end by hitting that final and throwing that game 5.
Okay, so
you have to say
no. I can take it. It's fine. I heard it from everyone nowadays, but that final pisses me off because people think I was the reason we lost that series, right? But no one looks at the fact like Broken Blade getting caught in game 3 at the Dragon twice in a row, or Acadia and Bjergsen losing 2v2 at level 3 with Rek'Sai, Lissandra to Cillian Skarner, right? No one thinks about this, but everyone blames me for dying. And I'll admit, in game 5, I played like shit. If I played better, we would have won. And we would have been champions, and maybe the whole year would have been different. We would have got to MSI, we would have won against IG probably, but we would have been doing better, and we would practice against good teams, and therefore been better in Summer Split. And it could have looked a whole different year, right? But I do hate when people say that I'm the only reason we lost that series, because it's not true, right?
Yeah, of course.
Sure, I'll take credit for one game, for game 5, but the other games we lost were not my fault. I played decently, I would say. I didn't play perfect. I'm not saying that, but yeah, I think it's so easy to judge because it's game 5.
Yeah, and the big moment just sticks in people's mind.
Of course. And it's ironic. I made fun of Jensen, before that. But he also
that was a little bit of karma, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's really ironic. But for that whole thing, if I had to go back and I knew the result of the finals, I would do it again because I thought it was fucking funny. Because Riot has this thing where you have to walk in front of your opponent, right? So it's like support against support, jungle against jungle, and suddenly it's like me against Jensen because they want to have this Bjergsen doubles narrative. I'm like, fuck this, right? So I'm gonna make fun of Jensen for fun, right? And my teammates were kind of like a little nervous, so I wanted to just do something fun because I wasn't nervous. I was feeling great that day. So, and I could see the smiles on my teammates' faces, and they were like having so much fun on stage when we were there, and I could feel the confidence in everyone. And then I thought, fuck it, I'm gonna BM Jensen double lift on stage because why the fuck not? I do regret doing it after game 1.
No. Don't regret it. Please keep doing it.
No. I think game 1 was funny, but I think game 2 and 3 was too much, and I agree that it wasn't funny after that. I should stop it. But game 1, I don't regret it. I'll do it again. If we play finals again. But like, yeah, I thought it was funny.
Plus, I will say, by the way,
again, knowing the result.
There's actually an element I didn't know about that story because I'd forgotten this, which is that Jensen himself has done that to people in the past. So actually, he totally deserves it. Like, screw that guy. Like, if he's done it himself, like, you can't complain then, can he?
Yeah, I mean, Jensen used to be like the biggest internet warrior, so I'm sure he's okay with it. And I know him personally, so I don't think it's a big deal to him or anything. And
well, luckily you were playing that game on LAN, so you couldn't call in the DDoS to take it down because he's like.
Yeah. All right, so you guys like to transition this into your game. So the first game is a rematch of the last finals, which is Cloud9 versus Team Liquid, and so now you're going to be playing on C9, and it's going to be the very first game of the season. Now, obviously, a lot has changed, but Microsoft, thank you, has provided some stats for us on the matchups that existed last year. So we can look at like Licorice versus Impact here, and these stats are pulled from the entirety of last year of the LCS. So when we go into this matchup, now it's going to be weird because Pobelter is going to be jungling, obviously, so probably Cloud9 has a pretty decent edge. But what are your thoughts on the top lane? And we're going to look at the mid lane matchup as well heading into this season. Obviously, Licorice has more experience under his belt. Impact, a world champion, longtime veteran. So how are these players comparing, and what are your thoughts on them having played against both of them last year?
I mean, I think both players are players that are good at sacrificing for the team. Especially Impact is a very sacrificial player for his ball lane. I think Licorice is very willing to start fights, and playing in this team, both Nisqy and Licorice are willing to take on the engaging role or the fight starter role. They don't mind giving up minions or like farm to look for a team fight at Dragon or something like this, and it feels nice to play with them. I don't even know what to say about these guys. They're both like bruiser tank players for the most part. They like to play the sacrificial role. So yeah, I like this kind of top laner. They're both very good weak side players.
Yes.
Which I
mean,
appreciate.
basically, you're almost describing like Licorice is the player that you wanted Haunter to be.
I mean, yeah, I think Haunter is a great carry player, but he's not a very great weak side player for the most part.
Sure.
And everyone can improve at something, right? But yeah,
So
I think top lane ever since like past the 15 Juggernaut patch it's been more important to play bruisers, tanks, and weak side than to play carries for the majority of the year at least. So yeah, I appreciate having a good tank, bruiser, and person that knows how to play weak side. On top of that, Licorice has very good communication, so I enjoy playing with him so far.
So what champions do you think we're going to see in the top lane? Like, what's been meta in the scrims these days? Are we going to see some of these similar ones? Like, I mean, Aatrox's probably still going to be kicking around, but what else has been up there? I
mean, I don't want to like leak our scrims or anything, but I don't think we'll see Silas. This champ is terrible right now.
Sure.
He's absolutely dog shit. Sion is also in the dumpster for a while now. He got nerfed. He got nerfed in Summer Split last year. Now he's terrible. Victor top is not a thing. I think at least I haven't seen it in scrims or solo queue for years.
What's the most meta top laner at the moment?
I guess I mean Monte said already. I think it's Aatrox. I suppose he's played a lot of solo queue. He's played a lot of scrims, but I think we've seen like Rumble is permbanned in the LPL, or not permbanned, but it's a high priority both mid and top. It's a flex pick. Ornn is a flex pick as well, top and mid. We'll probably see those champions be priority for top laners and mid laners. Rumble, Aatrox, Ornn.
Sounds like it should be a good split for both these guys then.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the top laners in the LCS like Impact and Licorice, Huni are pretty good at these champions, so it might be their split.
So let's take a look at the mid lane then. Obviously, you were talking about Jensen earlier. So we have Nisqy versus Jensen, who are players with, I would say, relatively different play styles. We're looking at their stuff from last year. Now, this matchup, we chose these matchups because they're the same, right? Between these two teams. So what are your thoughts now that you faced off against Jensen and Nisqy a number of times? Now you're teammates with Nisqy. How do you think these two guys stack up?
I mean, I think I mentioned it earlier. The same thing applies here, that at least from my scrims, Nisqy is a player willing to sacrifice for the team. He doesn't mind giving up waves. He roams a lot more than my previous mid laners, not just Bjergsen. I'm not trying to create a narrative here.
Sure.
He starts a lot of fights. He plays these, I don't want to league scrims champions-wise, but he does start fights a lot, and we do team fight a lot in this patch. Dragons, Heralds there's 2 Heralds now, there's 4 Dragons, and they're all really important. And I think Jensen is a little bit more of a selfish player, kind of like Doublelift, I suppose, where they're the resource drawers, or that's not a word, I think, but they draw resources, whereas in C9 it's more of a shared thing, I guess, all across the board, where everyone takes a little bit, I suppose. I don't know, it's kind of hard to create a distinct difference here, because the champions that played are the same in this split.
Both Soy abusers, though, as you can see from the stats there.
Yeah.
Luckily, I don't think we'll be having too much of that, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I think Akali, for example, is going to get gutted soon. Next patch, he will be removed from the game, essentially. So that's great. Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, I do know you have some scrims to go do right now.
Against,
so
TSM, in fact.
Enjoy your scrims against TSM, and good luck, of course, against Team Liquid on Saturday. All right, cool.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, we are back here with our last Cloud Connections guest by AT&T, We have to switch some boxes around, guys. Sorry. It's André, who's the coach of Origin. Welcome.
Hey.
The thing is, what we had to do is we had to schedule him. We had to schedule him as the last guest because, like, last show I did with him, it killed the show entirely. Like, that show's never even going to be on the internet again. So, just in case, we put him at the end because you never know what might happen. You know?
No, I mean, I think that's not going to happen this time.
No, it's all right.
Everyone seems quite prepared this time.
Exactly. This is a professional operation. Don't worry about it.
Significantly more professional.
So, okay, right. Obviously, we have to switch gears now because we were talking with all the other guests about LCS. I do notice, actually, to be fair, they're all European guests.
Yes, we'd only talked to Europeans today.
That's NA now at this point in time, you know. But let's actually talk about...
It's hard to find an American.
It is, isn't it? Let's talk about LEC now. So over at LEC, one thing we could touch on, first of all, actually, is... they've done a little tweak to the format in LEC for this split where people remember, yes, we already had like sort of a double LM element, but we didn't really. It was like just the top two teams played like and had a second life. And now they've made it so that it's kind of like, it's similar, right? The 4 teams start in the top part, but then the part that's interesting is I notice like if seed 4 loses, they go like 1 round earlier in the lower bracket and then the other one goes after or something. I think it's to encourage you to get a higher seed. Is it something like that?
It's
Can you explain it?
From what I was able to understand, the first 4 teams just play on the winners bracket. I assume that first seed will choose if they play against 3rd place or 4th place, and the second seed will choose the other. And then the 5th and 6th place start the loser bracket already. So these teams do not have a second life. And from what I was able to understand on the first week, that's how the schedule looks like: 5th against 6th, 1st, 4th, 2nd, 3rd. And then whoever loses from week 1 from the winners bracket plays against whoever wins from the losers bracket, and so on. I guess that there are 2 games in the second week of the losers bracket on the second. I mean, it's just too many second, first XD. But it's basically, from what I was able to understand, the lower seed that loses the winner bracket plays first, and then whoever wins from that plays against the higher seed that lost from the winner bracket.
Yes. Again, it's to encourage people to get the whole point, and this is the wrinkle I want to bring up, is it looks really stupid at first, but I get the reason why. And it's a way to make it so that all 4 of the top seeds have a meaning. Like in the past, who cares if you come 3rd or 4th, you know, or 1st or 2nd? In theory, it's the same shit, but it does matter now because 1st gets a pick and 4th potentially drops down, well, the lower seed drops down lower. So like, it's a way to make it so that people don't rig the brackets, etc. in theory.
Yeah, I mean, for sure now, before or in the previous system, the first seed and second seed would matter way more than the other ones, but now it's basically the top 4 do matter way more. And I think that there is also a difference between being 3rd seed and 4th seed because of this. So each seed you go higher, the better for you. Except maybe 5th and 6th, that's kind of the same. You just start down there.
So I actually like that angle because I don't know if people saw this, but I actually did a video at the end of last split where I hate the fact that like people can just troll once they sort of know they're in the playoffs, or they know like, who cares if I'm 3rd or 4th or whatever. Like, I don't want people doing troll games in the real LCS, like, well, LEC in this scenario. Like, in theory, I want people to play every game like a sportsman. Like, you're trying to get the highest seed and then you go from there. You don't just think, who cares if I'm 6th or 5th? Like, no, it should matter on some level, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate that. And what I really... On a larger approach, what I think is really great about the LEC right now is that ever since they did the big rebrand, which I think was highly successful, is that they've been actually trying to think for the product of League of Legends. And what really tilts me is whenever I'm in these meetings with a bunch of people, even eSports people, like, they're always like, oh, no, it's too complicated. The fans can't possibly understand that. You get this explained to you once, and it's pretty easy to understand. And I'm sure the LEC will do a good job of, when the playoffs come around, sort of reiterating all the implications of these seedings. But this is a significantly better system than we've had in the past. And like Thorin's saying, it gives real meaning to the seeds. So people are always so scared. They're like, well, I don't know if the fans will get them. Like, the fans aren't stupid. They're either you are bad at explaining it to them, honestly, or they're going to go ahead and get it when on their own accord. They're going to look into it on their own. And as long as you have a better system and as long as you have better games, who cares if they don't understand this? I'm a fan of a lot of the stuff LEC is doing right now because it seems more in touch, content-wise, format-wise, with an esports fan base, and specifically with the League of Legends fan base. So I think it's been really good.
No, I think so too. And previously or last year, they also changed the format, and I saw a lot of graphic explanations between games and all of that they usually have a lot of free time, and they use that time to explain it. And to be fair, after a certain amount of times that you see it, it's quite easy to understand. And I don't think it's going to be any different this time.
Okay, let's talk a bit about Origin then, because obviously you guys did make changes in the off-season, right? Obviously, we actually covered some of that technically on that Listen Local show, so we did some of the insight in that regard. But at the time, we didn't necessarily know every single roster that was in the league, etc. Right now that you've actually had time, what did you guys start
in December in Europe, while 100 Thieves was here as well. We actually played them like 1 or 2 times, and then we started now since the 4th of January that we have been scrimming. So it has been actually a while.
Do you have a sense now for what sort of team this Origin is going to be?
Yeah, I think that the previous, or the idea that we had in the preseason, it's quite similar to what's been happening. And to be fair, it's actually quite a rewarding group to watch scrimming. And the way that it's shaping out to be, and what I assume or hope that we show on stage is something that it's really similar to what I think the way the game should be played.
Was it Xmithie that thought you had to go for every dragon?
No.
Whose idea was that?
It's our teams that the bot lane is so vocal, and if the jungler doesn't want to go there, the reason that they use, and you can see it in solo queue as well, they just type in chat, yo, Drake's up, we have bot prio, we can do Drake. And what they're really asking is just babysit us, please come here, just we don't want to get ganked.
Right, I see.
And then automatically it goes that way.
Makes sense.
So you guys did something very interesting for a European team, which is that you have imported an Oceanic player. So I want to get your thoughts on this. Why did you decide to bring in Destiny? Obviously, you still have Hiva as well, but we've seen a lot of Oceanic players start to come into the scene. Now, part of that is because of the implosion of the OPL and everything like that. But why import somebody from Australia?
Yeah, so honestly, we don't see it as an import from our concern about your importing and occupying an import slot. We just wanted a player that would adjust to the needs that we had, and Destiny kind of filled them, especially with what was available in Europe. And this couple of weeks of scrim kind of confirmed it, where I feel like this whole narrative of the rookies, honestly, some of the rookies, by not saying most of them, are being quite overhyped, and it just gives us a lot more security to the choice of Destiny. We wanted a player that was really good at engaging. We wanted someone that somehow already had some kind of experience, and would not just be bullied by someone like Upset. And we find all of that in Destiny. I mean, it's true. I don't know. Is
that a problem that you have?
Important.
Upset bullying people?
No, it's not. It's not that. It's like Upset is an AD carry that is really vocal on his opinions, right? As I think it should be. And if you have someone that is just gonna submit to everything and just agree with everything, then you're actually not helping him as well. You need to be able to have someone that has his own ideas and is able to debate with him about certain aspects of not only the mid game but also the laning phase. And it already happened that I know cases where the one part of the bot lane is so dominant to the other that the other one just follows, and then they just don't progress. But yeah, basically those were the reasons from Mitch. Big voice in his team in Australia. Something that it's not only Mitch, but in general from minor regions, highly motivated player, because he has nothing to fall back to. Like this is his first and only chance to actually succeed in something that is not Australia, and just felt that it would be someone that fits really well to the team.
I mean, it's good to hear that now. I do have to warn you, though, that in esports history, players named Destiny always become an insufferable jerk on a long enough timeline. So just be careful about that.
Nah, I don't think it's gonna be a jerk. Like, this guy brought me Nutella.
No, it's just a joke. It's just a joke about StarCraft.
It's not gonna be I don't know. I hope.
What
not.
he should have
Otherwise-
done is
otherwise
brought
I'm
you
kicking
a.
him back to Australia.
He should have
man.
brought you a jar of Nutella and a jar of Marmite and swapped the labels and not told you.
But
And you'd go, "Oh, delicious Nutella! This is going to be great." What the fuck is that? Come off the bottom of your shoe or something?
he brought some like Vegemite or something.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I
It's,
was like,
it's
so
unbelievably
disgusting.
bad, isn't it? It's so
It's
bad.
so bad. I don't know.
Unbelievably bad.
And then it tries to convince me that KFC is traditional food from Australia. He has some really weird shit. Like
Okay.
it's just
Fair enough. I mean, technically, if you look on the internet, his country doesn't exist anyway. It's a conspiracy. So look it up, guys. It's a real thing, or is it? Who knows? I'm not here to tell you. So, right, since we haven't talked about any LEC teams, let's just pick a couple that would be interesting to talk about from this split. So, who's a team that you think is really interesting of the newer lineups?
Of the newer lineup. So we are excluding G2.
Everyone except G2, basically. Yeah, I mean, we can talk briefly about G2 for the role swap, but aside from that,
to be fair, I think that every LEC team at the moment has some kind of history, especially we already played against every single team, and it's actually good to see that you can have a narrative for all of them. I feel like most interesting, or probably like strongest right now, will be most likely the ones that people are already expecting. So us, G2, Rogue, and Fnatic. And then the other 6 are kind of close, I would say. But I do feel that there's a little bit of a gap. But all of them have
Rogue,
really interesting.
Like, that's obviously a pretty cool one because, again, obviously everyone knows
Yeah.
most of the players in G2, Fnatic, etc. But the Rogue angle is a good one because I've seen lots of years of League of Legends where, a team with rookies comes through and they look good first, but then, normality returns. They just go back down to being okay, or the rookies don't progress. They get to a level and they don't go further. Like, Rogue actually looks like a team where there's a real chance that there's a whole bunch of players who've never been top players could be like the 3rd best team in Europe or something crazy, right?
Yeah, no, I think they have really talented players in I think all roles. It's hard to see a weak link on that team, but at the same time, it's also hard to see that guy that is always going to carry, which doesn't mean that the team is weak or anything. It just means that the team is balanced. It can come from anywhere, which is also in scrims really surprising. They play extremely aggressive, and they are not scared to fight, which is something that it's also not that regular on younger players. So that's what makes them really good as a group, as a unit. They also already have experience together. It's not 6 months actually, it's a year, because they all played, or kind of the trio at least played together in
the Ultraliga.
Ultraliga. But it's a team that definitely can keep going higher. It's not that traditional rookie team that you see that had a good split and then falls back down. I think that they'll have a really good shot this year.
And I actually think another angle on that team, I mean, everyone obviously knows this one, is just the angle that Vander's been able to build his career back up. That's just a really cool angle. Like, he's become one of the better captains, it looks like, in this scene. Whereas, like, he looked like he'd had his last chance and people sort of cast him away at the end of his last team. So, who else has got experience in that team? You look how good they were by the playoffs last year. I think it says a lot that he's getting this extra chapter in his career.
But honestly, sometimes that's actually quite good, right? When I felt that this Rogue team, since only Vander had experience in that group, that they kind of grew together, right? With Freddy and Bloomingan, which I think it's quite a good staff. They end up growing together, and that makes it even more enjoyable. It's not, for example, the case of Nemesis, where he has a bunch of veterans already surrounding him and everyone can put input, and only he has to keep up with the team to reach to the at least level / experience of their team. In their case, just they grow together, they learn together. They only knew, or they kind of started at the same level not only experience but also expertise about the game. So it's quite rewarding to see. And obviously, I think that Vander with the coaching staff have a lot of merit towards that growth.
So going back to what you guys have been doing during the offseason, your preparation, you mentioned earlier, and obviously it was pretty public, that 100 Thieves like came to your facility and started working with you guys there. Can you describe like what that process was like? Why 100 Thieves? How did you as two coaching staffs in different leagues sort of set everything up? What was your process and what was your goals for having this extended boot camp?
I don't know. Honestly, like it's not like we boot camped with them. You know, that we just have a facility. Astralis wasn't using their room, so I guess that they contacted the Physio and they say, hey, "Can we go there?" And we say, "Yeah, sure, come here." And then I just added him to the Discord Scrim channel that we have with all the LEC coaches, and he was able to book with everyone that was available. I believe probably the only team that they were not able to book was G2 because they were not scrimming at that time. I think there was another team that wasn't, but I mean, I thought it was quite easy. We played them 1 or 2 days, not more than that, but we obviously didn't exchange like scrim views or anything, just because I mean they were scrimming our competitors, so that wouldn't make much sense.
Yeah, for people who don't know, because obviously Origin plays from the Astralis facility when they do this, like that facility, from what I remember, I think it has like 3 different PC rooms and we're like entitled, because obviously if people don't know, Refresh originally did own a whole bunch of different teams. They had Heroic, and then at one point in time, they vaguely had the Godsend people involved. So like the concept, what is it? It's not just like one house that you go into, because obviously, like I'm going to guess the Cloud9 house only has the space for Cloud9's team or whatever, but they actually have like a facility that's very unlike a lot of Western teams in that sense. It's more like almost what the Chinese teams have or something, where there's a massive facility.
Well, we occupy 2 of them, so if Astralis is there, there's no boot camp for anyone.
Sure, makes sense.
So what you're saying is they were mostly just using a room, not that you had a structure in place for specifically scrims between the 2 of you or some collaborative coaching technique.
I mean, that was more on the Physio. I think they made it like a content piece with him or something, but there was no come here, let's exchange some ideas and stuff like that. That didn't.
Right.
Obviously, at dinner we ended up talking, discussing ideas between like what we think it's good or not, but never sharing information of scrims, obviously. So because of what I just said.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Like I said before, actually, to be fair, there is one angle to talk about with G2, which we should address, which is that they have obviously done this crazy role swap.
Yeah.
Now, the ridiculous thing about that is people can go back when they first did the role swap of Perks going to AD carry. I actually made a video. Yeah, I actually made a video when I heard it, because I heard it and I thought they were joking when they first said that last year. So I made a video where I was just like, it would be cool if it happened though. But I didn't mean like this. I didn't mean like Caps also role swaps. I meant like do it for the odd. I meant do it like as a flex, you know, as in if Caps practices 1 AD carry, then you don't know at the end of the draft. Suddenly they swap and Perks plays, I don't know, something simple like Oriana made that he's played for it. You know, I thought you did it for a joke. Like the idea they've done it like for real. And it's just going to permanently. Do you actually think they will permanently start that, or do you think they will try and swap?
Yeah, they'll try to swap back.
Okay.
I mean, it's
when do you think they're going to do that?
I mean, probably around summer. To be fair, it's not even bad, right? I mean, they said that they wanted to take spring lighter because they felt too burned out at the end, and this way it just gives them a bit more flexibility in draft. I think that. It's not even bot lane that feels so much. I just think that Caps is a bit better mid laner than Perks, and that's where it's probably gonna be felt a bit. But I think it's more into giving them another versatility. If it works, then they are genius, right? And if it doesn't work, they also have this. Then they have this fallback plan to go to, and they just rested during the whole spring split, and now it's the same team as 1 year ago, ready to rock and roll for summer. So. I think it's a great move for them.
That's actually the angle I hadn't thought of there. The one angle he brought up there that I hadn't considered is that because it's not like Caps role swapped and then you brought in a different mid laner, because it's the guy who also did just play it, you can go back. You can actually undo it if it doesn't work. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
I mean, I think it's
and now they go to Worlds with a team that is practicing with less 6 months than the others as like emotional charge and stuff, but still with the experience and expertise from a year ago. So
I also think it is somewhat of a mental reset too, because if it doesn't work and they bomb out and then they have to, I mean, they're not going to do that badly, right? Like they're still going to be
No,
good.
yeah.
But if they don't, live up to those expectations, well, coming into summer, there's an instant like switch they can flip mentally that's like, oh yeah, we're just going to go back and do the thing that always worked for us. And in a way, it sort of relieves a lot of the pressure of not having performed well. And if they perform well, then they'll be happy anyway. So, in some ways, I actually do think that this is incredibly smart of them. I don't really see, especially now that we know that Spring Split is a lot less meaningful overall, I don't see too much of a downside, honestly.
And by the way, you'll appreciate this, Monty. Like I've always said, because there's been all these infamous stories over the years that like, oh no, of course Perks doesn't poach players. Just every fucking good player in Europe just magically wants to always. It's like he's like the fucking lamp, and they're the moths being drawn in. It goes beyond that, Monty. Because now what I've realised is he's not just like next level poaching them. I mean, I make a joke that he has some sort of like code system when he's next to the pool with like where his drink is or what he orders. Like, oh, some chicken fingers, like stick them out, like some whatever he does. Like, imagine, it goes further than that. I can tell now he must have like hypnotic abilities or something because this guy can just.
Fuck did he convince?
He can convince people of anything. Think about what he did, Monty. Removed by a year, he convinced his rival, the only player considered better than him in the West at his role, to join his team by going, I'll play the different role. You take my spot. Then a year later, go, actually, I'll take my old spot back, and now I don't even have a rival. Like, this guy's a fucking genius. And now Fnatic doesn't have that. Like, that's the most next level chess move anyone's ever done in League of Legends.
I've cracked the poaching code. So next time he goes into the bar with the other players, right? He orders the gin gimlet, right? He offers, he's like, hey, I'm going to buy you a drink. Would you like a gin gimlet? G2, right? Gin gimlet is the code now for Perks as they try and get these players.
Makes sense.
I don't know. I guess, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe they'll just give me a title for free. I hope that's what happens.
Is that what you're hoping? A Spring Split title?
I don't know. I mean, a title's a title. I can't complain.
Is that so? Has it changed your coaching at all coming in? That these changes to the format, has it changed your strategy? Do you have more of a long-term vision now? Do you feel more willing or able to take risks?
I don't think it changed that much, honestly, because at least the way that I see, I just want to win next game. That is, it's not really for me yet. I don't feel like we are in a position, being a new team with 3 new members, that we just look at the long term and we just make these long plays like the G2 is doing. I just want to win next game and the game after that and the game after that. It's all that is crossing into my mind, and all the strategy that is going to be put in is just making sure that week after week we improve and that we give our best in order to win that game. So I'm not thinking long term due to this format changes or whatever format changes might be.
Let me think. What about you, Monty? Do you have a team you want to pick to talk about from LEC?
Yeah, let's take a look here. I mean, I'm curious how much of a mix-up there's going to be coming into this. I'm interested in Schalke, obviously, because I think Forgiven's return is super compelling. Like I'm very curious about what his performance is going to be like after having such a long break. Obviously, I'm confident in his abilities because I know he's just an insane grinder. But I think it's fun to see a lot of these, like an old player making a return after doing something else for a couple of years. So have you had a chance to scrim it all against Schalke coming in?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they make it to playoffs.
I've heard that they might be like the 6th or 7th best team, basically, and that it hasn't gone that well, basically.
I mean, it's more onto about Forgiven itself. I mean, we are gonna play them obviously this week.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they are one of the teams that can actually start stronger. I don't see a lot of room or growth room for them, because it's just hard for me to see how the pieces would actually fit as long the time goes by. but definitely now I don't think they are on like a bad level or anything. I just feel like at the end of the split, it's not going to be too well for them. I don't know. It's hard to talk about them because like we play against them this week, but I don't feel like they will be close to the top.
No. I mean, some of the players, like there's some potential, like maybe Odoamne turns his game around, or Abadage had a little bit of potential, but like,
well, Gilius might be an issue.
No, that's the problem. They added him last, basically, and they had that jungle spot just open the whole time. So until you have that filled in, you can never really know how good the team is. So seeing the players they have now, and based on the things I've heard, this is going to be more like when Forgiven was in Copenhagen Wolves, not like when he was in a top team like H2K or whatever, when they were like actually had really good players. So I'm only interested in that team from the Forgiven angle. Like, let's see if he can be really good individually. That's about the only interesting thing about the team.
No, don't get me wrong. I think that if Forgiven gets really far ahead and Hard wins this lane, at least as hard as he could win back then Schalke can obviously win games. The problem is that I think that the skill gap between Forgiven and the other AD carries back then is not the same as now. I think that this split, as we talked before as well, Thorin, I think that the AD carry position is really stacked.
Got really upgraded, yeah.
It's insane. I think that the additions of Karzi and Comp are really good additions, and it's just all around quite good AD carries. So the same way that I see Schalke winning games if Forgiven gets really far ahead, I don't see them win any game if that doesn't happen. And I don't see that happening that often due to the difference of skill not being that big. That's my concern for the team.
So besides Rogue, who you're pretty bullish on, are there any other teams after the roster shuffle in the offseason that you think might be surprising in LEC or that people should watch out for? Misfits obviously had a very rocky time last year, bringing in some major import talent like Gorilla, and it never really sorted itself out, and then they had to flip to the new roster. So you think they're going to be doing a lot better this year?
Yeah, I mean a lot better than. I mean it's kind of hard to do worse in a way, with all the money invested and then the results. At least that comparison is hard to do worse. But I think that after those four that we talked, honestly, I see XL and Misfits right there. I think Misfits, even though a lot of people has been putting them on the last spot and all of that, I think that it's, from what I've been seeing also in scrims, it's not that crazy to say that they could clinch a playoff spots over Mad Lions and Vitality. It doesn't seem that crazy at all. I don't know. They have been playing well. Obviously, they have a bit of a buff that Mad Lions has as well. The fact that their support jungle played together a year before. So that's obviously a bit of a initial buff. But the B-Voy guy doesn't seem bad at all.
It's interesting because he role swapped, right?
B-Voy?
No.
Honestly,
he carry back in like LPL or whatever.
I thought he was a support in LPL.
No, I think him and Imp or whatever used to be on the same team, didn't they?
Okay.
Weren't they both on LG?
Yeah, you're right.
It was LGD at the end, but
I have no clue
one team
where, I don't know. The guys just played well. And the Ronaldo Forgiven thing, I mean, Ronaldo didn't show that well on stage against XL. But from scrims, and we have been scrimmed all teams, I wouldn't say it's crazy to think that Misfits could clinch the last playoff spot after XL.
Do you think that they will actually put Forgiven as the starter once we get into the split, though?
I think that after the Neo Surf Cup, I think that's possible. Actually, I think I know that already. Let me check.
You're checking if you know that? Well, don't spoil anything. That's not supposed to be.
I'm checking if I know that. Oh, I don't know that.
Okay.
I don't know.
By the way, one thing I will point out that is actually genius is, right, earlier on the show, obviously Monty came back and did Worlds, and we did like that whole period, and he was referencing when he was talking to Kobbe about Svenskeren in Splice like being not a very good support player. And I did say like the problem with that is he was a better support player like earlier in the year last year, and the problem is at Worlds he did in a bunch of the games, so everyone has a really bad last memory of him. I like the way he's done the genius move, and this is a piece of advice out there I'd give to a lot of players. Just change your name. Yeah, he just changes it. Now
I mean, he
Svenskaren's dead. Now he's Thorin. There we go.
I
No
mean,
problem.
he changed the name due to other factors, I
Yeah.
guess.
I'm sure, but you know.
If, Splice content team made quite a blunder in there, and
Yep.
or was it on purpose? I don't know, man.
Wow, that's a deep tinfoil
Nah, I'm
hat
kidding,
theory you got
Obviously
there.
it wasn't. Obviously it wasn't. But I mean, Northkaren, I think is also doing quite well, at least in scrims. I am a bit worried about. The only thing that worries me about the XL team is who's actually going to take a leader voice in there. Because I think that Northkaren doesn't speak a lot in terms of proactive plays. Kadro will have to do all the work between coordinating with two solo laner Koreans and a bot lane that doesn't speak a lot. So that's what we'll have to see about them. But they do have, in my opinion, the fifth best roster, and they should easily get playoffs.
I've got a question for you, right? Normally, just like I've noticed, the two roles that do this is coach and jungler, which is what they do is they always defend each other and they go, well, no one can really know what a coach does. Just like the jungler goes, well, it's all about the other laners, you know, like a jungler can't carry the game on his own. So here's the problem though, right? Is mate, Youngbuck was getting that ass. He was winning all the championships. He was everyone was telling me he was the best coach for the last few years. Like, what do you actually think we should put pressure on him with this lineup? Like, it's not the greatest lineup. Like you said, it's all right. It's maybe like a playoff borderline team. Like, should this be the test of if he is the super coach who can really bring everything out of everyone?
I don't think so, honestly. I think that his quality as a coach was proven already. I don't think it can be denied. It's one of the few coaches in the league that I do have a lot of respect for. And I think that if this roster is perfectly capable of clinching playoffs, and honestly, everything that he gets more than playoffs it can be addressed to him. Of course, I think that's perfectly plausible. And when I mean him, I mean the whole coaching staff. Obviously,
sure.
Everything that we do, it's as a coaches, it's never alone. The players have a lot of things to do with it, and the rest of the staff as well. But I don't think it's like, if he fails with this roster, then it means that it was all bullshit what was said for him, and I don't think it changes anything, honestly. I think he's proven as one of the best coaches, if not the best, and everything that happens this split at least will not change that.
Any more topics?
Just my opinion.
I mean, I think we're good. If you don't have anything else you want to bring up, Andre?
That's fine.
I mean, not my show, Monty.
Well, you're here. You're here to promote Origin and your team. So if you have something you want to say about your roster or your players or your expectations, go ahead.
Nah, just be excited to watch us play. I can tell that the scrim results we have so far have been really, really satisfying against all teams that we played. So I think it's going to be a good year for us.
Very good. Very good. Well, I guess that'll wrap up this episode of the 9 Summoning Insight presented by AT&T. We've got a Cloud9 roundup coming up after the show is over, so you can stay tuned and enjoy me being very awkward. We will be doing this Tuesdays, by the way, at 10 a.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central European time, so you can keep following us here. Remember that we are going to be doing this online until we get the studio, at which point we will be doing it in the studio. So we will see the production quality increase, but we wanted to make sure that we were here for the actual start of the season, providing you with awesome content. So be sure to follow Cloud9. By the way, right now, we're going to do a giveaway as well. So if you are in North America and you want to win a Puma gift card, put hashtag Puma in the chat and your favorite guest. So we'll see who your favorite guest was today. Now we can have guests compete against each other for Puma stuff, which is exciting for us. So hashtag Puma with the name of your favorite guest from today. And if you're over 18 and in North America, you will have the chance to win that Puma gift card. We will see you next week when we actually have matches to talk about, which will be exciting. So thanks for joining us for our preview piece here. And enjoy the Cloud9 roundup coming at you now.
Howdy there, buckaroos and buckarettes. Welcome to the first ever Cloud9 Roundup, where we round up all the news on Cloud9 eSports just like a herd of cattle. First up, ooh-wee, we've got some big news in the Counter-Strike scene. C9, as you may have known, has now acquired the roster in its entirety from ATK. This new American and South African mixed roster is already making waves as they qualified for IEM Katowice, beating out the old Brazilian squad of MIBR. Now, Cloud9 also had to release their last group of players, and the old coach, James, well, now he's moving to a new consulting role with the organization, so he'll be there advising Cloud9 still. Now, of course, here on the Cloud9 Roundup, we've got to discuss the big League of Legends news coming in from Cloud9. The last original member of the team, Sneaky, now he's decided to move on to greener pastures of streaming. Now, he's going to stay on as a partial owner of the team, but his days playing professionally for Cloud9 are over. We, of course, wish the best for Sneaky on his streaming career. As many of you may know, the Cloud9 team recently went to Korea to boot camp. They've been working hard, scrimming some of the best Korean teams, as well as the other teams boot camping there from North America. Now they're back now, and they've started scrimming again today. So you can expect to see some polished performances once this LCS season starts. Moreover, Cloud9 Academy team has been announced. Of course, Fudge, Inori, Palafox, Diamond, and King will be making up this new Academy roster. If you're curious, two of those players are coming all the way from the Oceanic region as Fudge and King join from Mammoth. Now I know you Overwatch fans are wondering about the new London Spitfire roster. Well, there are now 4 new additions that will round out the team to a full 12 players, the maximum amount allowed on an Overwatch League roster. Now, that roster has added Babel, Jihan, Aldo, and Kleston to their lineup, which means those full 12 players, they're Burner, Fuse, Glister, Hylie, J-Mac, Krillin, Shui, and Sanguinar as the other 8. It's a roster full of rookies and promise, and they've kept Coach Agape through thick and thin, and he'll be looking to change these rookie players into champions once again. Now, on to PUBG Mobile. You may be asking, why does Cloud9 have a PUBG Mobile roster? Well, this roster and PUBG Mobile have put up some serious numbers on the streams. And that means that, of course, Sixless is going to be the latest addition to the C9 PUBG Mobile team. And they did, of course, place 4th with 111 points overall in their latest PUBG Mobile outing. In Rocket League news, well, things are saying just the darn same. Squishy Muffins, the superstar Rocket League player, will be coming back with Gimmick and Torment alongside Coach Fireburner for the foreseeable future. Now to finish our Cloud9 roundup for this week, we're going to talk about Rainbow Six. Cloud9's Rainbow Six team has had a rough run recently. They got bodied 0-2 by those dastardly players from Fnatic. But They went 1-1 in the latest Rainbow Six Korea Open Season 1 with wins over Scars and Talon eSports. Their overall record, 4-2. Finally, in WoW Classic, Snoots from C9 takes down Nazgul 3-1 and is the classic Duelers League Grand Finals champion. Congrats to Snoots and, of course, Cloud9 for another trophy. And to round things up, you're probably watching it right now, but if you're not, remember the Nine's Summoning Insight presented by AT&T will be coming to you live every Tuesday throughout this year of League of Legends. Myself and Thoorin will be having a lot of guests on, and you don't want to miss the fun. Catch it live 10 a.m. Pacific time. Of course, still in the evening, 7 p.m. for those Europeans out there who want to watch. And, of course, you can catch the VOD, or you can grab it on Spotify, iTunes, or Google Play. That's it for this week's C9 Roundup. See you next time.
All for me grog, me jolly, jolly grog. All for me beer and tobacco. For I spent all me tin on the lasses drinking gin.